por Facebook.
Listo, muy
Listo,
bien.
muy bien.
Ustedes me
Ustedes me
dirán,
dirán,
espérenme un
Sí.
segundo, espérenme un
espérenme un
segundo.
segundo.
Sí, Kenia, es porque yo tengo mi micrófono abierto porque se me dañó la entrada del computador. Entonces, mientras yo hable, vas a escuchar ese eco, pero ya después yo cierro mi micrófono y no deberías tener problema.
Listo, de
Listo, de
una.
una.
¿Sosi?
Ya te
Ya te
cuento.
cuento.
Nos das la acción.
Sí, dale.
Sí, dale.
15
15
segunditos.
segunditos.
Transmitiendo.
Entiendo.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a
Good
todos.
afternoon and welcome everyone to this fifth day of our second encounter of the Ride to the City. Excuse me, that ring was here at home. Oh, please be silent. I'm just like those fails. I don't know if you've watched those collection of fails in pandemics. I'm just like that. The only thing missing is that somebody passes behind me naked. What's naked behind me? Excuse me. Welcome to the second encounter of the Ride to the City. This is a very special day. It's the fifth day and the last day that we will have this kind of conferences. We hope that we can assemble again in the future, next year, to articulate joint actions in this network of transeúntes disidentes, which is devoted to thinking of intersections and solving the challenges of the right to the city. And these conferences that we have done these days have been with the intention of creating a scenery of how the right to the city is in Latin America, what the underlying causes are, what are the most important struggles, what are the most important challenges, and what are the most important tools we have to confront the problem. It's been very interesting because we've been able to talk to different experts. We've had perspective from the truck use, from the reform on truck policy. A moment, please.
Perdón.
I'm sorry, forgive me. Here we go again. So we've had a diversity of conferences, from the reduction of damage, um, the safety speech, institutional violence, all the situations that underlie segregation problems. And we've had not only experts speaking here, but we've also had debates, conversations, discussions, comparisons, cross references from different territories. And we've tried at this space to generate comparisons and cross references. For example, the differences and similarities of the violence situations, institutional violence situations in Brazil, in Colombia, in Mexico, in borders, in cities, in favelas, in peripheral areas. What is the relationship of all of them together? And after that exercise, after creating a space for the right to the city that we have been working on in this network of transeúntes disidentes, we wanted to invite Diego Cancino, a congressman from Bogota Council, member of the council. He was part of the CPAT team. Fortunately, since he was appointed to the, sorry, he was voted into the Bogota City Council. I'm very proud that you're there, and I'm proud of the work that you've been doing there. As I told the participants here before, I was telling them about your latest report, how you reported the fire at a police station that killed 9 young men. I thought that it was very brave, infinitely brave, and very important for everybody and for the Bogotanian community and in general Latin America. So we wanted to invite you because you're very connected to these subjects, to these matters. And we're going to conduct a workshop of a symbolic act because we strongly believe in the power of symbolic. Excuse me. I've been speaking a lot these days. As we profoundly believe in the power of the symbolic, we have invited you to conduct a workshop and somehow summon, conjure those transformations, to summon, to call upon those transformations that are so necessary for our societies. And that's why, with the intention of giving closure, but also keeping the energy up out in the universe, that these situations can change. Now we have Diego Cancino. Excuse me. Diego, please take the floor.
Bueno, mil gracias
Well,
y mil gracias.
I really appreciate it.
Quería empezar con una cosa, pero
I wanted to
Silvi,
start over with
Silvi,
something.
Silvi,
Sylvie, is that right, Sylvie?
Sil-
Sylvie.
Silvi me puso la agenda y yo
Sylvie
puedo, digamos,
uh, wrote this on my agenda.
de
Sorry,
obedecer a ella.
she wrote me into the program. Sorry, and I cannot
El
miss the
conjuro,
program.
la etimología de
She said
conjurar
something
es
important, and
significa
it's
que nos ponemos en una posición
summoning,
muy
calling
profunda.
upon something,
Es que la
conjuring something,
acción y el efecto
and that is the action and the
generan la
effect.
práctica
It
y
not
nuestro
it's not just
objetivo
the
es hacer
practice, but also the consequences of
conectar
that practice,
a alguien o algo
and to connect to
mediante un
somebody
juramento.
through an oath, to somebody or something
Quisiera
through an
empezar
oath.
este
And,
taller, esta
and I wouldn't
enseñanza
like to start
con
this
una
workshop or
religión,
this conference
pero no puedo no
with
hacerlo.
a religious reference, but I can't not
Y
do
no
it.
desde una manera dogmática, pero
And
sí
I don't want to do it from a
desde la
dogmatic
religiosidad
perspective, but I believe that religiousness,
es la
just like
capacidad
art,
de religarse,
is the capacity to
religarse
reconnect, to
y
reunite,
generar acciones y
to
efectos para
generate
llegar a ese
actions and
conjuro
effects so that you can connect to
con
somebody,
amor
link
desde la
to somebody else
espiritualidad,
from the
desde la
spirituality,
imaginación,
from
desde un
imagination,
juramento, desde algo
through an
que
oath,
sea sagrado, desde
to
algo
at
que
some
sea muy
point
profundo.
that to some extent must be sacred
Y yo
and
invitaría,
profound.
y no lo invito yo, sino que fue lo que hizo
And
Silvi,
I would invite you
que
all,
quiero que hagamos
and
una
not me,
sesión
Sylvia did it. We would
de
invite you all
capacidad de conjuro, de generar
so that we
acciones-efecto
can create that capacity
para
of
llegar a ese
conjuring,
conjuro
summoning
y generar
the power to connect to the others and
un
generate
pacto que
a
sea
profound agreement, pact,
imbatible.
an unbeatable
Y
pact.
yo creo que toda acción colectiva debe
And
estar
I believe that
sobre
every
ese
collective
concepto,
action or joint action must be based upon that,
en la capacidad de
in
conmoverse
the
con el otro.
skill,
Yo
the capacity to
estaba pensando en este
move
tema,
yourself emotionally with
dado lo
other
que acabas de
people and their
decir, Silvi,
situations.
del tema que hicimos
Based on
ayer,
what Sylvie just said, the reports
las
that
declaraciones que
we
hizo el
filed
ministro de
of the
Defensa, que
fire
hizo
in
el
San Mateo,
presidente, que hizo la
and I saw the
vicepresidenta,
declarations of the
la
minister, the
lo que
president,
se
the
puede decir en
councilman,
Catamarca, las
police
expresiones que usted
commander, the
encuentra en
chief,
nuestras
the
diferentes
expressions that
embajadores.
I heard that they were
Y
using.
yo creo que lo que nosotros
And I believe that
necesitamos
what we need
es ser más
is
cristianos de
to
lo que
be
decimos.
more
¿Sí?
Christian than
Para empezar
what
por
we
ahí.
say. I'm
Yo
not
creo
trying to
que
defend Christianity
todos
here,
necesitamos una espiritualidad muy profunda.
but we need
Y
a
esto es muy
profound
personal.
spirituality.
Pero si tú te dices cristiano,
Aside from the fact if you're Christian or not, but if you call
y
yourself
dices siendo
Christian
cristiano que
and you
Dios
say
quemó
being a
los
Christian
hijueputas,
that
pues acá hay un
thank
problema.
God they burned them, then we have a worldwide
Ese es el
problem.
a mi modo de ver, es uno de los principales retos
And
que
in
tiene
my perspective, this is one of the most
esta
important
generación,
challenges that
que
this
ha perdido la
country has.
compasión.
We've lost the
La
capacity to
compasión
feel
es,
compassion.
etimológicamente hablando, la capacidad de
Etymologically
compartir
speaking,
dolor,
compassion is the capacity to be able to
de
share
compartir el dolor con
pain
el
with
otro.
the other.
No es un tema de acto caritativo, no, es
It's
compartir
not
dolor
charity, it's
con
to
el otro.
share pain with
Entonces yo le agradezco
others.
a Silvia haber empezado así,
And I truly thank Sylvie that she
porque
started
todo
like that
esto
because
tiene
that's
que
what
ver con una cosa
conjuring
mística, es una
means.
cosa profundamente
That's something profound. It's mystic. It's linking. It's human. It's religiousness in the most profound sense. Okay. Just like they said in Greece, let's link those cows. Please, let's tie. That's how it started. We have to transcend to more subjectivity. We have to transcend our selfishness. And I'm going to say it boldly. We have to transcend capitalism. We have to transcend this market model. We have to transcend the state. And it embarrasses me to say this from a state that in many occasions is a criminal state. And within the right to the city, we have that right. But we also have the right to vindicate, hate the noise, the trenches, imagination, to vindicate that which annoys us and not to eliminate it. And that is conjuring, that is summoning. So I invite you to call upon these processes, like Sylvie said, and thank you. So I'll start with a question because I'm in a very terrible dilemma because now I'm a Bogota councilman. So basically, I'm a workshop man, not a councilman. But I do assume council as a workshop as to learn the capacity to transmit, transit, to generate bridges, to facilitate um, with my voice that I cannot um, deny that it could be something big. So I'm a little bit excited because of the way this workshop has occurred. So thank you all. So I have a question, and it is, what are we going to do? And I don't know if how we should do this, Sylvia. I don't know how we should go about this. If I should ask and somebody answers, or how it's going to be the dynamics. But if we conduct a workshop around how we're going to generate compassion in this country regarding the right to the city, the right to the city needs to generate the capacity to move us, to make us feel compassion. How are we going to do with those margins, marginalizations of the city, with those extreme situations um, at the borders of cities like in Latin America, like Belo Horizonte, Bogotá, Caracas, Buenos Aires, Montevideo? Those city limits, those borders, that in all cases are the same, I believe. You know this better than I do. How are we going to feel moved by those people that are being killed by bullets and with power abuse? How are we going to move when the police are murdering people for smoking marijuana? How are we going to generate a collective remotion and make it a big hit, a big success? If out of this workshop we can produce an idea, a proposition that can be a hit, then we're just wasting our time. That is the first proposition that I'm doing, and you'll tell me if you agree. The second aspect is the second question, sorry, is how are we going to build a vision? How do we build trust, confidence? How do we generate a space to create connections, conjuring Latin America to connect? How do we vindicate, I'm sorry to say, Jose Marti in this workshop? How do we make mixed breed Latin America in this workshop? I want that to be another purpose or goal for this workshop. The third objective is how the hell are we going to collectively, um, or learning that Jean Paul Sartre was told that imagination hits power. How are we going to face police brutality? Because this is not police brutality. How are we going to face police crime, police criminality? What are we going to do? So those are the three options that I set out. How are we going to get to move Latin America? These are very small three questions. How are we going to move Latin America? How are we going to generate a shared vision? How are we going to be the half blood of Jose Marti? How are we going to face with imagination police crimes? Let's prioritize one of those questions. and then we can conduct the workshop from that point.
La idea,
Well, I love the
no sé
idea,
si
and I don't know
alguien
if
quisiera
what we can do is that everybody, each
en
person,
el chat
can write on the chat which of the three questions is their favorite. Everybody has a vote,
entonces vemos
so
la que tenga más, ¿no?
we see which of the questions is voted the most.
Entonces, yo lo que haría es lo siguiente,
Okay,
si
Silvia, what I would do is
como
the following, if you let me explain. Sorry, I'm so
la
ashamed.
capacidad de conmover América Latina,
The capacity to move Latin America emotionally, to generate a shared vision of the mixed
cómo hacemos
blood America.
todo en perspectiva de derechos
What we have heard from
nacionales,
Jose
no quiere decir
Marti.
que yo esté cambiando el tema ni que esté
What are we
cambiando
going to
la ley,
do? Sorry, I'm not changing the topic, the subject matter
o cómo vamos a
of the
garantizar
right
esa
to the
igualdad.
city, but how are we going to go about this? Tell me the second question again. First, the capacity to move America
Capacidad de conmover a
emotional,
las
Latin
personas
America
para lograr
emotionally. Second, the capacity to have a shared vision so that we assume
ciudad como
the
una nación.
right to the city as a collective
A una ciudad como una
attempt
nación. ¿Cómo construimos una
to
nación?
make democratic cities. We need to build a democratic vision, all of us here, so that we have a Latin America, a half blood, mixed breed Latin America,
Esa es la segunda.
so that we are a territory of rights.
¿Cómo la vamos a
And the
garantizar?
third question is,
¿Qué capacidad de imaginación vamos a plantear
what imagination are we going to propose to collectively face or confront police crimes?
yo diría es que cada uno
With
de
those
ustedes
three options, I think that everybody has three
tienen
votes.
tres votos.
Each of you has
Y esos
three
tres votos los
votes.
pueden repartir como quieran.
And those three votes you can
Dos en una opción y
okay,
otro
you
en
can
otra
distribute them
opción.
as you wish, as you
O uno en
like.
una opción
Three of them in
y
an
otro
option,
en
or
otra
maybe
opción.
two of them in one and
Eso
one in
permite
another.
que la elección
This will allow for
social
the social election.
sea motivo. ¿Te
Okay,
parece, Silvi?
me parece, ahora me parece
okay, I
que
agree.
pues
Do you agree, Sylvie? Yes, I agree. Now, how are we going to count the votes? Okay, how are we going to count the votes?
Gustavo también dice que hay que, ¿cómo dices?
Can we vote verbally? Can we vote orally
Claro,
with
como
our
para
voice?
contar.
Yes, of course we can.
Por voz y yo anoto.
So let's voice vote and I will write them down.
Listo,
I'll
yo
put it
entonces
down.
empiezo.
Okay, I'll start.
Entonces está promover,
Moving. So we'll start. First, moving the people. Second, shared vision as Marty's perspective. And three, imagination, collective imagination
para enfrentar
to face police criminality.
policial. ¿Sí o no?
Sí,
Yes or no? Yes.
Empecemos.
Ready? Let's start.
bueno, yo pongo mis tres votos en la
Okay,
capacidad de
I'll cast
conmover
my
América
three
Latina.
votes on the capacity to move Latin America emotionally. Okay, next. Gabo. Okay, I'll cast two votes on the second question and one vote on the third. Ready.
T.D.
Okay, host. T point E.
Listo. Yo voy con uno en el
Okay.
primero, dos en el
I'll
tercero.
cast a vote on the first one, on the first option, and
Juan Arango.
one on the third. And two on the third, sorry.
Ese es el
Juan
mismo que
Arango.
está grabando en dos.
Muy bien. Entonces,
It's the same person. He's just recording into different channels. Okay, Stefania.
Estefanía. Margarita Guevara.
Margarita Guevara.
Bueno, yo voy con
Well, I
uno
think I'll
por
go
dos
with,
y dos
I'm
por
going to
tres.
cast a vote for number two
Listo.
and two votes. I'll cast two votes for number three.
Aguadi.
Um, can I vote? ¿Puedo votar?
Puedes votar.
Ok,
Faisal.
sí,
Está solo en el canal de inglés.
yo le pongo un voto a cada una de las tres opciones, uno a cada una.
Vote por el chat. Bueno,
Faisal puso un voto en cada una de las tres.
Okay, I'm casting my vote, one vote on each one of the three because I think the three are important. Stefania wanted to talk.
No, Estefanía.
Stefania.
Magdalena Mendoza.
Magdalena Mendoza.
Sí, yo pondría
I would cast
uno en el primero,
a vote on the first and two votes
¿Dos en cuál, Magdalena?
on which Magdalena
en la
and
opción
two
dos.
votes on the second option.
Silvia, apaga el micrófono.
Okay, Alfonso.
Alfonso Chávez.
Hola,
Hello.
perdón, tengo un problema aquí con
Sorry,
el audio, pero
I have
yo
a problem
votaría
with the
por el número
audio, but I would
3.
cast my vote, my 3 votes for number 3. Is that correct? You cast your 3 votes on number 3?
Alfonso.
Is that it, Alfonso?
Alfonso.
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 Perdón, me
Alfonso.
escucho, perdón.
Sorry, can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. You cast 3 votes on option 3.
Sí, es que tiene problemas de audio.
I believe he has audio
Entonces, creo que
problems.
se ponga a escribir.
So he says he's going to write.
Mark Krupansky.
Mark Krupansky.
Hola, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Para mí, número 3, pero más allá
For
de
me, I'll cast my votes for number 3, but beyond imagination, we need action.
Imaginación y acción. Perfecto.
Imagination and action, perfect.
Tres votos ahí.
And you cast your 3 votes? Mark, yes, sir.
Kenia.
Kenya.
A Kenia nos toca escucharla en el canal de portugués, ya la escucho.
Entonces, aquí
So, here,
lo escucho a Diego doble, igual la entendí. Capacidad de conmover América Latina.
the capacity to move Latin America.
Mark, las tres. Listo.
Okay, she's casting a vote, 1 vote on each one of the topics.
Eso quiere
Stephanie.
decir que tienen los 3 votos ahí, ¿cierto?
Those are the 3 votes. Stefania, you cast your 3 votes on imagination to face police brutality, police criminality. Is that correct, Stefania?
Efectivamente, la criminalidad, yo hago 1, 1, 1.
Yes, I vote to fight collectively criminality.
Estefanía 3.
Okay,
Listo, Estefanía.
very well, Stefania.
Escribo por acá. Kenia vota 1 por
Kenya votes, casts a vote on each one of the topics.
uno por cada uno.
I'll also cast 1 vote on each one of the possibilities. Very well, so let's see.
4, 6, 8, 9.
2, 4, 10, 9.
2, 4, 6, 8, 9.
Okay, doing the math.
8, 10,
Espérate,
12.
¿tuviste en cuenta a Tiago Cal?
No, wait, did you take into consideration Tiago Khalil? Okay,
Silvi, te quiero decir que perdimos.
Sylvie, we lost.
Y eso es lo más importante.
And that's the most important thing, to know how to lose gracefully.
Mark, dime si estás de acuerdo con esta
Mark,
frase.
tell me if you agree with this phrasing, imagination and collective action to face police criminality.
¿Estás de acuerdo con eso?
Do you agree with that phrase?
Sí, de acuerdo.
Yes, I agree.
No sé si yo les pueda pasar un
I don't know if I can forward you a link so that we can look at it.
absurdo y ridículo,
It can be completely absurd and ridiculous, but I want to start with that video.
aunque no suene, digamos,
If,
un poco
as much as it may not sound, it may sound a little crazy,
colocarnos un poquito en la discusión.
this can lead us into the discussion, and then we can have a conversation about it.
Pero me parece que es importante para
But I believe it's
inspirar lo que
important to inspire what
Puedes
we
compartir tu
want.
pantalla.
Can you share your screen? Yes, I can share my screen.
Y selecciona el chulito que dice compartir el audio.
soy un experto en estos asuntos.
Gracias.
Okay, I've become an expert on these matters.
Entonces,
So,
¿están viendo mi pantalla?
are you seeing my screen?
Ese video es buenísimo.
Yes, that's a really good video. Yes, we can see it.
Vamos a ver este video que creo que
Okay,
la mayoría
let's
lo ha
watch
visto.
this video. I believe most of you have seen it, but still, we're going to watch it again.
Sí, claro.
Oh, very well. Did you see it?
Claro,
Yeah, sure, of course.
¿Qué vieron?
What did you see?
chico bailando.
A dancing kid.
El poder de uno
The power of
con
one
ganas.
Eso es
with
lo que yo llamo
intentions.
explicar.
That's what I call
¿Qué más?
what? Colinchado.
¿Qué
Maybe
más?
energy.
Que
A quienes vayan a
What
ver el
else?
video,
What
les hago una
else? For
pregunta.
those who are watching that video, what did you see? And describe it in a word.
¿Qué más vieron?
What
el
else did
liderazgo
you
más
see?
importante es
The most important leadership
se necesita otra persona
is the second person. We need another person that can connect, link, or join.
¿Qué más?
Yo creo la convicción,
What else? Conviction.
porque no está esperando que llegue nadie,
Because he was
sino
not
está en su
expecting anybody
propósito.
to get there. He was just in his thing,
Espontaneidad.
doing his own thing. Spontaneity.
O sea, no
Muy
necesita
bien.
fingir,
He
tiene,
doesn't need to
es
pretend.
auténtico.
He's authentic.
Ejemplo.
Example. Freedom.
Libertad. Muy bien. ¿Qué más?
Very good. What else?
Dice en el chat Juan Arango una palabra de moda.
Juan Arango says contagion.
Contagio.
A fashionable word. Contagion.
¿Sí?
Sí, sí,
Sí,
señor, contagio.
Contagio. Muy bien.
Contagion.
Comunidad.
Community.
¿Qué más?
What else?
arrojo.
Arrojo.
Boldness.
Seguridad de sí mismo.
Confidence.
¿Qué tiene que ver un poco con convicción o no?
That has a little bit to do with conviction.
Sí, también
Yes,
influye la
somehow.
convicción.
Yes.
¿Algo más?
Anything else?
Divertido,
¿Cómo?
Fun.
¿Cómo, Gabo?
divertido.
Yes.
¿Qué
Fun.
más?
Divertido. Divertido. ¿Bien lo que están diciendo ustedes? ¿Qué más?
Look at everything you're saying. What else?
Persuasión.
Persuasion.
El paso indicado, aunque no sabe bailar.
The indicated step, even if you can't dance. The body.
Respaldo.
Support.
Cuerpo.
Body.
¿Algo más?
Anything else?
Ahí en el chat hay varias.
There are several in the chat.
Voluntad.
Persuasion. Will.
Permanencia.
Staying or
Bueno, miren lo que
being
ustedes dicen.
constant.
Ojo con lo que dicen porque es lo que hay que hacer, ¿no?
Watch out what you're saying because that's what we have to do. So
Yo creo que ustedes
I believe that
han
what you have done is to
imaginado
imagine
hacer
and create,
de facto una acción
uh,
colectiva
in fact,
frente
a
a la
collective
delincuencia
creation
social. Si no les gusta el término, lo pueden cambiar.
facing police criminality. If you don't like the term, I can change it, but I believe that it's police criminality, not police brutality or abuse. It's police crimes, criminality. If you think that's strong or harsh, we can change it. Criminality is perfect. Thank you, Margarita.
Estoy de acuerdo.
I agree.
Entonces, acá la vuelta es bailando.
So the thing here is to
Son acciones muy
dance.
fuertes,
It's
pero
something
también
really harsh,
al cuerpo. Miren
but
lo
we
que
also
dice,
must resort to the body,
al arte, a la estética,
to
al
art,
baile,
aesthetics,
a
dancing,
¿sí?
convoking, summoning.
Esa es una cosa que es fundamental, digamos.
That's
O sea, hay que
fundamental.
acudir a los elementos
We must
estéticos,
resort to the aesthetic
a la
elements,
capacidad
to the
de
capacity, the
ese
skill
fluido del
to
cuerpo, no
disrupt
necesariamente bailando,
using your body, not necessarily dancing,
pero con acciones
but with
performativas, por decirlo de alguna manera. Es lo que
actions, performing actions.
hay que tener ganas. Si
We
eso
need
no
to be
está,
willing.
nos fregamos.
If there's no will,
Entonces, el que no tenga
then
ganas,
we're screwed. So if any of you is not willing, that's legitimate, but
pero también hay muchos free riders.
We also have a lot of free riders, and we should not stigmatize them. Okay, those free spirits must not be stigmatized. They have to be there. And for them to be, there has to be strength, conviction. You've said something really important here, and it's the second person is key. And that is the question that I want to ask all of you. Who is going to be that second person for us? Who's going to be the second person that you said was the key to bring more people? Because we're the ones who's going to start the dance. We're going to start the dance from our conviction. But who is going to be that second person joining? Now you said it too. We have to look for a strategy, an inventional or conventional strategy, but there is also conviction in what you do. A spontaneity that was not pretending and that was not exactly seeking results. And that's something important too. We need to start working, even though we may not have a strategic route. Picasso's Guernica uh, did not intend to generate that strong impact that it caused. But who's going to be that second person? I think we need to think about this. We have to be convinced, confidence. And I'm going to say something that you didn't mention before, and I arbitrarily will say it. Confidence is also sometimes maybe if we don't feel a little bit of shame that this action is not worth it, we need to feel a little like it has to be bold, it has to be brave, it has to change other people's visions, it has to turn other people's heads. I'm going to show you an image of what we should do in my perspective. Spontaneity, not pretending, dancing and body, being authentic. If this is a pretense, we will not be believed. But if this is genuine and spontaneous, it's born from your soul, then we're going to be able to attract more people. But we don't need to speak. He didn't say anything. He just acted and he set an example. And that's clear. And starting with the politicians, because we politicians speak a lot but do nothing. So this is with examples, practical actions, like getting our hands dirty with the territories. There's freedom, and the right to the city is really worth it. We need to vindicate freedom, but also act freely. This action must be untied. Nothing should tie us down. But also, what are we going to do to bring more people into this? Not just in social networks, also on the streets, or communication media, and through political action and political incidents. How are we going to do this? This is a brutal challenge. But besides contagion, how are we going to generate community? That's a brutal challenge. I've been walking hand in hand with the victims of September 11th, since September 11th. Can you imagine all the disappointments? If we have a group of 20 or 25 families that are trying to connect because all of their children were murdered, or their brothers or husbands or wives were murdered, and to generate community in that space, that's really difficult because there's also distrust. Like, why was this kid murdered? Why? Maybe this other kid was agreeing with the other kid to kill mine. So we need to generate confidence. That's very important. But let me confess, my main political challenge, not electoral challenge, political challenge is because Suacha does not vote in Bogota, but my main political challenge is to generate awareness and connection. I need these women to connect, to be successful, to create a political agenda uh, for the people and for the rights. For example, Soacha mothers to generate community. And just as you said, there was community here. There was boldness. There was irreverence. It was fun. This has to be fun. We, the left wing, left-wing writers,
poco divertido.
we're used to doing not fun things, like boring things, profoundly boring
Esto tiene que ser
things.
divertido. O sea,
This must
llega
be
a ser como
fun.
alguna cosa muy
Of
compleja.
course, we're talking about something really complex, which is human life.
Burlarse, no ser
Having fun doesn't mean to mock,
digamos, pesado
but we shouldn't also
de lo
be
que se trata.
gloomy.
Nosotros le
It should
tenemos que
be
hablar a la
easy.
clase media urbana
We have to
de
talk to
Latinoamérica
the
Latina,
medium classes,
que lleguen.
urban medium classes of
Eso sí,
Latin
ese
America.
no
We
sé si
have
lo
to
conoce.
attract them.
Y suena muy
We
serio.
want to transform Latin
Jaime
America.
Garzón, no sé si lo conoce.
Jaime Garzon, I don't know if you know him, you're
Oiga,
familiar with him. He made us
pero de
reflect
un
upon
fragmento
it.
absolutamente común.
But from a
Usted que se
very
ha leído
common ground
Heidegger,
phrasing, and he had read Hegel and
vea que lo
Heidegger,
conoce.
and he listened to
Pero no fue una,
Tchaikovsky, but his phrasing, his speech was accessible,
entonces el tema divertido es
understandable.
pensemos en esto.
So the fan and the fun aspect, for example, let's take Kino as an example, the
Persuasivo.
cartoonist, persuasive.
Nosotros tenemos una práctica y es que
Oh, we
cada vez que
have
usamos
an
palabras
activity, and it's that
difíciles,
every time we
nos duele
speak,
mucho.
it sounds like we're trying to say
La
goodbye
mitad de las
to those
cosas
who are listening
que
to us.
nosotros le ponemos
Half the
en
interventions
la
I
palabra,
do,
entendiéndome,
we are scolding and reprimanding, and I include
ha sido
myself.
como
Half my declarations, half my depositions have been a little bit violent,
simplemente
and
convocarlos
that's not the thing. We also have to be
a
persuasive. We have
persuadir.
to attract more people. We have to add.
El
You
paso
said this.
indicado, eso es
The indicated
brutalmente
step.
estratégico, el
This is
paso indicado.
brutally strategic.
¿Cuándo
The
darlo?
indicated step.
¿Cómo
When should we
espontáneamente
take
se
that
da?
step? How do we take it
No, no puede bailar
spontaneously?
como yo,
This guy doesn't
pero si
can't
se siente
dance
seguro, pues
just
salga a
like
bailar,
me.
el
But if
gordito.
you're confident, well, then you set out
¿Sí?
to dance.
El paso indicado,
The indicated step.
eso es clave,
That's key.
porque muchas veces no damos el
Because
paso
a
indicado.
lot of times we
Y el
don't
primer
have
paso,
the
digamos
indicated
como el
step. And the
segundo
first
paso,
step we must take,
es el
just as the
más
second,
estratégico.
has to be strategic.
Tener voluntad.
The will,
Y
having
tener voluntad
will,
de poder, lo voy a decir. Yo
and
añado
having the
de
will
poder
to
decidir,
achieve
de poder
it
transformar,
in the sense of being
de
able to
poder incidir,
transform collective power to
de crear
inside, to
ruido,
transform, to
de
generate
trastornar,
noise, to confuse, to
permanencia y persistencia. El tipo nunca se
persistence.
agotó, siguió.
He was never exhausted. He continued. He never
Ayer
stopped.
en
He
el
never
homenaje
faltered.
en la Plaza de Bolívar
Yesterday, at the
a las
commemoration in
madres y
Ciudad
padres
Bolivar
de
of the
hombres,
mothers
hombres
and family members of those who died on
y la madre
September 9, 10, and 11, Dylan Cruz's mother, mm,
una mujer
I was
absolutamente
approached by a
valiosa,
woman,
muy amada.
absolutely valuable woman. She said, "I'm exhausted. I'm
Y yo fui un
tired. I
poco guache, la verdad, y le dije, su merced,
okay."
si usted se
And
baja
I
de
was a
esta,
little bit aggressive, and I said, "Okay, listen. If you get off this right, we're all
pues tiene la
screwed."
responsabilidad de la hijo de madre que yo le
Now,
pongo,
it's a huge responsibility that I placed upon
pero hay
her,
que permanecer y
but we have
persistir.
to stay. We have to persist.
Y como dice, y termino con esto, Fito
And
Páez
just like
y
Fito
Mercedes
Paez
Sosa,
said, and Mercedes Sosa, and I will end with
que iba
this,
a ser tan fácil.
who said that
Yo
it would
vengo
be
a
so
ofrecer mi
easy?
corazón.
I come here to offer
La
my
inspiración
heart.
de esta
And I
acción
believe
es
that the inspiration of this action must
esta
be
frase de Fito Páez.
based on
No
that
será tan
Fito
fácil.
Paez sentence, and it
Yo
will
vengo
not
a ofrecer
be
mi corazón.
that easy.
Y
I
tenemos
come here to offer my heart, and we have to
que ofrecer nuestro
leave,
corazón.
offer our heart.
Entonces yo creo que con estas propiedades ya
So I believe
tenemos
that with these
una leve
properties,
inspiración
we
de
already have an inspiration of
esta acción.
how
No sé
this
si quiera
action
comentar
could
algo
be. I don't know if you have any
sobre lo que conocemos.
comments.
Yo sí
Sirvi.
quisiera
I would
agregar
like to
un
add
poquito
something that
y
we're
es
missing,
que
one that we left out, we
siempre
forgot about it, and I'm not sure if it was Ecstasy MD,
pero ese bailarín tenía ayuda de
but that dancer was somehow
tal vez
being
unas
helped with a
recomendaciones quizás,
substance.
pero
I'm not sure if it's only
es
some
súper
beer, a few
válido
beers,
ese
but I believe it's
comentario
very
y sí
valid and
quisiera
valuable
usted
when we're talking about
mencionar
reforms on
algo
drug
de la
policies,
reflexión
and when we're talking
que
about
estamos
having
dando y que
fun,
puede
and when we're
desarrollar
talking about the free
el
development of
prójimo
personality and
a
boldness and freedom,
yo creo que
I
es
believe
importante
that it's
notar
important to note
que a veces para
that
romper
sometimes
esas
to
cadenas
break
de
those
violencia
chains, those
uno tiene que dar un poquito de
shameful
valor,
chains,
¿cierto?
we need to
Porque
feel a
si
little
queremos ser
shame.
arrojados,
We
a
need to
veces
be
se
bold. We need
necesita
to be
un poquito
brave.
de
So we
ayuda
need a little help
para eso.
from
Y es un tema
to
también
And that help is also maybe like Carl Hart said at the first conference, let's get out of the closet ourselves and let's stop saying that it's not right and that those who are using on the streets are the ones who have a problem. And I believe that it's important to bring that up because definitely boldness and bravery, the boldness that the dancer had, also speaks very highly of
Sí,
this matter.
pertinente el comentario de
It's
Silvi,
completely pertinent. Sylvie's comment is completely pertinent and appropriate. We should say it clearly. It's drugs, it's substances, and they're here, and they're in the context, within the context of what this kid was leading and what others were following. So, on the other hand, I would like to. There's another word that probably was missing, went missing, and it's the word opposing the word order, and it's the word disorder. It's clearly disorder, disorganized. The exercise that the dance is doing is completely disorganized. But this should not lead us to think that it's good or bad. It's simply disorganized. It has its own aesthetic, its own shape. People come and go. The second step, people assume this in many different ways. His purpose is he's persuasive, but he's not. It's not his purpose. It doesn't mean to convince or press or coerce anybody. So what I mean is that this dynamics that you're proposing, Diego, there are many interesting things that we can get get out from this exercise. Especially with the second Latin American encounter, we should consider the fact that the right to the city is being profoundly discussed, and from the actions and creations around the drug war, and the victims of the drug war, and the actions that generate community. Those are the most important aspects that we must consider for our conclusions in this workshop. And the reduction of damage and filing reports of what is happening in the drug war in terms of the right to the city. So I think it's important to consider that element, the disorganization, disorder element, because in the end, the state and the law enforcement concretely tend to organize them or put some order into them. And spontaneity should not necessarily should be organized or ordered. So that's why we're again going to generate tension with an institution like the police with nothing but a slogan that is freedom and order. So for this exercise, I think that word is important to reflect upon it. And of course, it's a very interesting exercise. It's drugs, and people help themselves because people want to be okay. They want to feel calm. Carl Hart precisely said, I come home and I do cocaine or heroin or have a drink. Why do I do that? To feel better, to feel good. Basically, that's what you watch in that video, people feeling good, people dancing. There's an aspect you've mentioned. Maybe if I'm minimizing it, if I'm misinterpreting it, please stop me immediately. Don't worry, we know how things are with you. And this is it. The right to the city is also the right to welfare, to living well, to feeling well. And it's obvious, but we tend to forget about it. So I thank you because it kind of slipped my mind. So I'm only thinking of etymology, but I'm very well serviced by disordered. It has to do with disturbance, alteration. Look at everything you've said about disorder, calm, confusion of the order. And that's a main purpose, I believe. The properties, we already know them, but the purpose of the goal would be to generate um, restlessness, uneasiness, okay, to diverge in the most profound sense, okay, Okay, to subvert, to change meaning,
dar un giro, cambiar un orden,
to turn around,
lo
to
establecido.
change the order, the pre-established
Y en
order.
ese sentido, en ese
And
cambio
in that sense, in that change of order, I believe it's very important based on what Gabriel said,
y es que
on what Sylvie
en ese
said,
desorden, en
that
esa
in that disorder,
subversión,
in that
hay una acción
subversion,
performativa que es el
there's
tema de las
a
drogas.
performing act, and it has to do with
Edgar Allan
drugs.
Poe fue
Edgar Allan
una
Poe
subversión performativa.
was a performing
Edgar Poe
subversive.
fue una
Hector
subversión
Lavoe
performativa.
was a performing
Charlie
subversive.
Parker fue, digamos, la
Charlie
subversión
Parker was
personificada.
subversion, let's say, personified,
Y así muchos, y muchas hay.
and many of them
Angela
just
Davis,
like that. Angela Davis,
varias cosas en contra de la cárcel, pero también la
all of those
liberación.
depositions against prison, but also that release, that
Y por ahí
liberation.
empezamos trastocar, subvertir, me parece que es
And in that way, to
veamos
diverge, I
y
believe
voy a
it's
hacer un
important,
poquito
it's key.
prolaico de nuevo,
But I'm going to be a little bit
frente a lo que estamos
prosaic
hablando.
here.
Y es que quiero que veamos
And I
esa
want you
teoría
to see
para
this
tener en cuenta a la hora de comunicar.
so that we can consider this at the time of communicating. Do you see this curve?
¿La ven?
Can you see it?
¿Sí?
Can you see this curve?
Sí, sí se
Yes,
ve.
we can. Yes, we can see it
Acá ven el mouse.
here. Can you see my mouse?
Sí,
My
Entre
mouse
55
indicator
y 55,
between 55 and 70,
los que decimos de derecho racional,
it's where we are. We lie here, the convinced ones, the ones who have studied, the ones who have
los que no
uh,
tenemos que convencer a
done
nadie,
some research, the ones that do not need to be convinced.
nosotros somos acá.
Those are those are us, the ones who are here. That's approximately 15% of the population.
No las estigmaticen,
15% that would say, please do not stigmatize drugs, please work on damage reduction. Sometimes we need help, and those help are legitimate. The right to the city,
lo voy a decir claramente,
all of those matters are understood by only 15% of the population.
los extragodos conservadores
Okay,
dicen
here we have
que
the
drogas
far right extremists and conservatives that say that drug is waste, that those drug addicts, pot users are uh, being aggressive to the city and they're damaging society. To talk to these people is very, very difficult.
es la gente que no tiene FAN,
And 70% is those who
ni FAN.
don't give a damn.
Entonces, ¿cómo reconociendo lo que dijo Silvi y lo que dijo
So,
Gabo,
in recognition of what Gabo and Sylvie said,
desde acá,
how are we going to talk to
o sea, si
these
nosotros
people?
hacemos una acción colectiva,
If we conduct collective action
que contagie, que
and more with the body so that it is contagious, that it's persuasive, fun, with conviction, confident, where we add and attract the second person, where there's will, where there is permanence, persistence, where there's also help,
ejemplo, donde hay libertad,
external help,
que no la vemos esta gente,
example, and freedom. Okay, how are we going to talk to these people
es
about all
decir,
of that?
ustedes lo dijeron,
So you said it yourselves, persuasion.
¿y qué vamos a hablar a esto?
And how are we going to be able to talk to
El
them?
segundo gallo que se monta está acá.
The second guy embarking on the journey is right here.
Esto que es el free rider, el conductor
But the
autorizado, la gente
15th
autorizada,
one, the free rider,
vamos a montar
is key. How are we going to include those free riders?
con la claridad que acaba de decir Silvi Gabo, pero
With the
ese es el
clarity
reto de la acción
that
social.
Gabo and Sylvie used. But that is the challenge of every collective action. Because the difference between a stone falling down and a human action is that human action has meaning.
Tiene una finalidad,
It has a purpose, has an end.
entonces una acción
Okay.
colectiva es,
So a
digamos,
collective action
la
or joint
comunicación de
action
comunicación.
is the communication of
Ese ejercicio de
communications.
comunicar, y yo creo que debe
That action of
llegar
communicating
a
is
ese 70%.
adequate for this, and it should convince the 70%.
¿Cómo lo vamos a hacer?
How are we going to
Pues en
go
el
about
fondo
this?
es
How will we
la
do this?
capacidad de conmover.
Okay, that's why I put cast my 3 votes on the capacity to move emotionally, because I believe that
Lograr una acción
to
lo
accomplish
suficientemente
an
poderosa
action that's powerful enough
que llegue a ese
to reach
70%,
that
necesitamos que
70%,
ese
we need
15% esté
that
convencido,
15% that is
no solo
convinced,
convencido, sino
isn't
conmovido.
only convinced, but also moving.
digo yo. Ahora sí, volvamos a
Also moved, not only convinced, but also moved. That's what I think. Now, if we can move that 70%, these questions that posting, I don't know if somebody's writing them, they can be put down so that somebody who's going to watch this later can see them, can access them. What does this video inspire in you? What properties should it have? And then the second question is, how are we going to talk to those who aren't convinced, but that have a skill of listening skills? They can listen, not that 15% of the far right, extremist far right. How are we going to use that capacity to move? What does that mean? What do we do? Do we distribute books? Do we go out to the streets holding a joint in our hands, a huge joint in our hands? What do we do? What is the meaning of moving? What is that? Magdalena, what does that mean? Alfonso, Mark, Juan, Kenya, Marcela. What is the meaning of moving? Sylvie, you had the idea. So you say you were walking down the street, I think of Bogota, for example, but also in Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires. And what's the name of this neighborhood that I love so much in Buenos Aires? Ah, damn. San Telmo, thank you. You're walking down the streets of San Telmo and you say, okay, let's move the people. Let's get moved. People will say, what? It would be like telling a boy or a girl that we like, okay, I'm going to make you fall in love with you. We don't do that. We just make them fall in love with us. We conquer them. So how do we do this? How do we go about it? Transmitting emotions, right? Moving is a reaction that generates movement. And I include myself in it. And this movement can be generated in many different ways, like moving their bodies, moving their spirituality, their sensitivity, their intellectual spirituality. But basically, moving is done on the basis of using your body and your emotions and sensations, and the sensations of your body. That's how I identify it. And how do we move regarding police criminality? Well, that's already a matter that has been placed in the middle of the discussion, because precisely moving, let's see, the victims of these war and drugs, we should acknowledge and recognize the possibilities or the challenges we have, possibilities and challenges that we people have around these conflicts that are generated in the city and that violate the right to the city. And regarding exactly drugs, based on what I read, what I see, from the reality of those young mothers losing their kids, and from the young kids that are in prison, and the drug dealers, etc., and also ring the bell. So we need to develop a strong community strength to be able to transmit this, but we also must make it systematic. I mean, we should generate these contents and make them systematic. Register those reports that are affecting the human body and that violate the rights of the people. Very well, Gabo. Okay, Marcela is raising her hand. We have to listen and actually see the other person. I think that's another hint, to listen and listen to the difference. Listen to those who think differently, to recognize and listen. See, okay, acknowledging and recognizing.
Yo creo que hay un elemento muy
Acknowledging.
importante, hola.
I believe that an important element, hello. Oh, you appeared like out of nowhere, like boom. So that's what I'm like. like phenomenons, as a professor said. You appear and you disappear.
Yo creo que hay un
Okay,
elemento
I believe that there
también
is a key
frente al
element
tema
here
de drogas y pues al
dealing
tema
with the topic of drugs
de brutalidad o violencia policial.
and
Y es
police
que yo creo
violence or
que para poderse
brutality,
mover tiene que ir de la
and
mano
moving
compasión,
has to come along
¿sí?
with feeling compassion.
Pues porque si estamos hablando
Because
de un concepto
if
más
we're
amplio
talking
de
about a
reducir el
broader
daño,
concept
como lo
of
estamos
reducing the damage, which is what we
en la charla inaugural
spoke
Con Raquel Rodríguez,
about in the in the
comprender
inaugurational
que el tema
conference
de la
with Carl
reducción
Hart,
en el marco
how do we
de
understand
la
this
ciudad,
reduction of damage within the context of this right to the city
todo el tema, digamos, puramente territorial,
and the
tenemos que
territorial
entender
matter,
que la compasión es
territorial aspect?
una de
We
las
have to understand
bases
that
de reducción de
compassion
daños.
is one of the
¿Sí?
bases, the fundamentals of damage reduction, is to share our pain with the other, share pain with the other,
Exactamente.
which is how we started
Exactamente.
the
Compartir
etymology
el
of.
otro. Y creo que esa es la manera
Okay.
para poder
And I believe that's
entender y
how
escuchar y entender al otro,
we can
escuchar al
understand and
otro
listen to
y
the
tener
other,
la
as Mark
capacidad de
said.
compartir ese dolor, ¿sí?
Okay, it's
De
very
una
important to have the
de otra
capacity to
manera
share and feel that pain.
pues no
Otherwise,
se logra.
this is not accomplished.
Déjenme precisar un poquito. No sé si
Please
todos
let
siento
me
que estamos de acuerdo con el tema
precise
de
this a little bit.
conmover, pero también
I think we all agree with
generar
the
compasión.
topic of moving, but also generating compassion. Let's
O
see,
sentir
building
compasión,
compassion,
capacidad de sentir compasión.
or the capacity to
Creo que es un
feel
poquito
compassion.
más
adelante y nos lo
I
decía
would go a little bit
Natasha
further ahead,
Neri ayer o antier en la
and Natasha
conferencia
Neri told us
de
yesterday or the day before
Acto
yesterday in her conference,
con las
she made a documentary and she
madres
connected with the mothers
víctimas de lo que
of the
significa
victims of police
esto
brutality and
y
police
ella
murders.
decía,
And
es
she said
darnos cuenta
that if we
que esto
realize,
nos puede pasar a cualquiera
it's to
de
realize
nosotros,
that this could
¿no? Y
happen to
entonces,
any of
a mí me
us.
parece es muy
And we should
interesante que
realize
después
this
la
before it
compasión que
happens,
nosotros
actually
tenemos
happens to
compasión
us.
con el
Because if
otro,
we decide to have
estamos
compassion with other
estableciendo una
people,
diferencia de fue al
we're
otro el que le
still
pasó y yo siento
establishing a
eso
difference and keeping a distance.
es
Like,
como a todos
I
nos
understand
pasa,
what happened to the other
todos,
person, not to
a
me, but
todos
this is happening to
con
all
ese,
of us
con ese,
in society.
ese
So
asesinato de esas
that
9,
murder of those
todos
nine
cometimos
people,
9,
we
todos,
all
y me
lost
parece
nine
como
people.
saber
We must
que
know
es una avanzada a
that
pasos tan
this
agigantados
is a crusade
que en cualquier
with
momento
gigantic
empieza.
steps,
Entonces es
and
como
it will hit
démonos
us any
cuenta
moment.
y actuemos
So let's
antes
realize
de
and
que ocurra,
act
porque esa es, ¿no? Es, somos todos
before it reaches us.
víctimas de alguna manera,
We're
sin que
all
lo
victims
seamos
somehow.
directamente. Entonces
Without
a mí me
being a victim
parecía súper
directly,
interesante
we're all a
esa
victim
posición
somehow.
de
And I
sentir
believe that's very
empatía,
important.
de
That
quitar miedo
position
y sentir
of
que
walking
eso
hand in hand with those who
también
have
puede ser
gone
para
through this
nosotros,
and understanding
para
that
los que
that
ya
child was also ours
y
and it was
sentimos
murdered.
compasión.
For those of us who feel compassion,
Entonces, como un elemento de análisis que
it's
nos
an
traía también
element of
Natasha en su
analysis,
ejercicio de
a
investigación
tool of
que
analysis that Natasha
pude
brought
mencionar
here
inicial en
in
Río
the
de Janeiro.
exercise of police brutality in Rio de Janeiro.
Un segundo, por favor.
Just give me a moment, please.
Bueno, quería... Es que mi memoria ya está muy
Well,
berraca.
my memory is already full or not working right.
Espérenme un segundito, a ver si la logro.
Give me a moment, please, to see if I can get this. If I can do this.
Mm, no, no la logré. Bueno,
Sorry, I couldn't
hay
do
un
it.
poema que si me ayudan y si alguien lo conoce,
Okay, there is a poem. If you help me, if anybody knows it,
en otra ciudad de
Bertolt
Oklahoma
Brecht,
murieron
and it
3
is
personas y no pasó
in
nada.
another city, a bomb was dropped, three people were killed, and nothing
Cayó una
happened.
bomba,
In the
murieron
neighborhood I
7 y
live,
no pasó nada.
there was a
A 3
bomb
cuadras
dropped.
cayó una bomba
7
y
people died and
murieron
nothing happened.
20 personas
3
y no
blocks
pasó nada.
away, there was another bomb dropped.
Ayer
20 people
murieron
died and
3
nothing
personas
happened.
y
Yesterday,
murieron
a bomb was
20 personas.
dropped in my
Ok,
house,
estos son
on
los
my
poemas.
house.
Más o menos
My
así dice
family was killed
Bertolt Brecht.
and my life was destroyed. My
Como
name is
están
not
diciendo, sirve
Bertolt
como,
Brecht, and I'm not a poet, but
como
that's what I
en
mean.
cualquier momento esto puede pasar.
How do we say, how do we make people understand that this could happen to any of us any moment?
Frente al tema de
But
la
there
compasión,
must be also a
es muy fácil
reflection
pasar
in the
de
topic
cualquier
of
momento, pero también el tema de la compasión es
compassion.
aunque no me pase, yo
But
soy parte del otro.
compassion means even though this isn't happening directly to me, I'm a part of this other person, of this victim. So I should feel not his pain, I should feel the pain with him. I should not feel his pain, but our pain. As somebody said in Germany during the Second World War II,
Primero vinieron por los socialistas y yo no dije
first
nada
they
porque
came
yo
for
no
the
era socialista.
socialists, and I didn't say anything because I
Vinieron
wasn't a socialist.
por
Then they came looking
los
for those
trabajadores
who were
y
labor
yo no
workers
dije
at the
nada.
union, and I didn't say anything because I didn't work at the
Vinieron por
union.
los judíos y yo no
Then
dije
they
nada porque
came
yo
for
no
the
era judío.
Jews, and I didn't say anything because I wasn't a
Y no
Jew.
había nadie para qué hablar.
Then they came for me, and there was nobody else to speak for me. Thank you. Of course, I was misinterpreting Bertolt Brecht. That is the summary. I think the poem should be the inspiration. It's, it's impressive. That poem is impressive. Okay, thank you, Mark. So we take this poem, and this is what we should do. But if we take this poem and we talk about compassion and moving, if I told you in this graph, I'm sorry to insist, but this graph is fundamental to me when we need to create joint actions. Who are these 70%? Let's decipher that. Let's find this out. Figure it out. We still haven't answered correctly. What is it to move? How is it translated into practical words? How do we understand it? Okay, so if somebody tells me, let's cook risotto, let's move. Oh, wait, I know how to cook risotto. Let's take the cheese, let's take a little broth, we take the rice. But how do we move? That's a very difficult question, and I don't know if it can be answered right here. An artist, you can ask an artist, how do you generate your art? And it's something complex. So how do we generate these actions, these ideas? Before moving and inspiring compassion, okay, I don't want to fall into this problematic described in the Brett's poem. Who are we going to move? Who are we going to connect so that they feel compassionate? The police officers? Are they here? Those conservatives who say that drug users are a tragedy? My mom, Marcela's mom, um, an badly, poorly paid maid, people in the second or fourth social strata, financial strata, the rich kids, women. Which women? But besides, who are we going to move? But who is the second person we're going to move? That's clear, and I think Marx said it. The second person is key. We know that we must have a second person, a follower, and we must move because we have to generate compassion, feel the pain with the other. Mark, the chief commander, what he did was to move Mexico. Jose Marti moved Cuba. He moved it so much that he got independence. Miguel Hernandez moved Spain. So who are we going to move? Who's here? Who is in this in between these 85 and 100? Let's try to identify them. Unions, women, youngsters, people from the second financial economic strata, women who do not have employment but do domestic work, housework, people, opinion leaders, poets, artists. Who?
A los que están congregados en las iglesias
Those who are
evangélicas.
congregated at the churches. Oh, please do not spoil my exercise. So I believe that the best action would be, okay, let's write it on a piece of paper right now. Please, each one of you, write it on a piece of paper.
¿Quién vamos a conmover?
Who are we going to move? Yes, who? And what Mark says, who is that second person? Who is the second person? Who is the second person that will join our dance? but taking into consideration that we need to move the other so that he moves other people as well. And we create a chain. Ecstasy or MDMD. So that it generates that energy. Okay. Okay, I'm very generous today. I feel generous today. So you can write 3 options. So each one of you, if you wish. Sorry, I didn't understand very well. Is the 3 options of what we understand for compassion? No, 3 options of who would be the people that we need to move, the people that we need to persuade and move, the second person. Who is going to be that person that we want to join us? The person that we want to convince around the problem of the war on drugs. Sorry, excuse me, is that I got disconnected for a moment. Well, if we don't pay attention, this is not going to work. What are the 3 population sectors that we want to move? Thinking especially that they're the first ones that we're going to approach. So the quotidian everyday people. And those who will join us and follow us immediately, no matter the result, no matter the consequence, and that will add more people to it. Okay, as you command, sir. Very well, quickly, please. 3 sectors or 3 groups. I don't know, whatever you want. Are we ready? Ready? Ready. I'm listening. Sylvia wants to talk. We'll let other people speak first. We'll let someone else speak first. Magda, how do you see this? Well, I initially thought of the young, especially the ones we know, the ones who are close to us from public universities or private universities, but the young, those who belong to organizations, cultural organizations, and other kinds of organizations in the territories. I also thought of, I don't know, in the senior citizens. I'm talking about people who are close to us. So I've thought of some senior citizens that are in the territories. I even thought of Venezuelans. Like, I thought of moving a lot of people because I believe that that range you were showing us in the graph includes many people. So those are the 3 groups that I'm thinking of. I thought of a lot more, but I'm focusing on the young, on senior citizens, and Venezuelans, Venezuelan migrants. Thank you, Magdalene. Alfonso.
Sí, yo propongo, o sea, desde
I
mi
propose,
experiencia dentro de
from
la
my
comunidad,
experience, based on my experience within the community,
con personas habitantes de calle, creo que
with the
el primer
homeless,
punto que yo pondría es como
I believe
vernos
that the
desde la
first
organización
point would be to
o desde
move
las organizaciones que
ourselves in our
trabajan con las
organization
comunidades,
and the organizations that
porque en
work
muchas
directly with the
ocasiones
populations and
creo que
communities.
primero ocupamos nosotros
Because in
entender
many
bien la problemática
occasions,
para posteriormente
first
como
of all,
ver
we
a la
need to
comunidad
understand
como
it.
tal.
so that we can
Y
later
pongo un ejemplo, por
experience the
ejemplo,
community as such.
los médicos pasantes,
For
por ejemplo, que llegan a la
example,
organización, a esta
doctors who
clínica
are
comunitaria,
in their
en un
fellowship,
principio
then
llegan,
they
¿no?
come to
Diciendo,
community
bueno, aquí me
clinics,
van a
and
asaltar, es un
at
área
first they
peligrosa,
say, okay, I'm going to be
no sé,
mocked.
me
This
va
is
a
a
pasar
dangerous
algo, ¿no? Si
area.
llegan con
Something bad's
cierto
going to
miedo,
happen to me.
pero
They get
posteriormente,
there
con
with
el
some
tiempo, se
fear,
dan cuenta
but
de que
later on they
el trabajo
realize
comunitario o con la
that community work
población
with the population,
no es tan peligroso
with the
como ellos
people, is not
creen.
as dangerous
Vienen de
as they
fuera,
thought it
¿no?
would
Vienen de
be,
otro,
because they're
digamos,
outsiders. They
vienen
come from a
de
different
otra, de otro estrato social.
strata, social
Entonces yo creo que
strata
es importante
reality.
eso, como ver a la
So that's
comunidad
important to
para
move the
después
community
como ver a las
so
autoridades.
that later we
Y
can
también nos
move the
pasa en
authorities.
otras intervenciones que hemos realizado,
And the
por
same things
ejemplo,
happen to us in other
con la
interventions we've
sobredosis
had.
o con...
For example, in the matter of
Sí,
overdosing. Let me interrupt you.
¿Quieren que interrumpa ya y se aguache ya o al final?
Okay, what do you prefer? For me to interrupt now and be rude now or in the end?
Díganme ustedes. Escuchamos a
You
todos,
tell
estamos
me.
interrumpiendo. Lo que ustedes prefieren.
Do we hear everyone or do we interrupt? What do you prefer? Okay, do it your way.
Jóvenes de universidades
So,
públicas y privadas
young from the public and private universities, young people from public and private
han
universities,
generado movimientos.
they have generated movements, organizations. Have they generated opinion, a pact?
Habría que ver qué jóvenes y cómo. Me parece que no es descabellado.
We'd have to think of
Jóvenes y cómo.
which young people and how.
Acá voy a jugar un papel absolutamente
I don't think it's necessarily crazy, but we would have to see how.
en la película
Okay.
de Chile.
Okay, I'm going to mention the movie of the option no in Chile. Let's see if for example, let's talk to the victims, Pinochet victims. Let's talk about massacres. And then this guy says in a very deviant way, no, let's make a very happy video. How are we going to do this? How do we approach that 70%? So with the young people, I think it's okay, but how? How do we approach them? Now, the way of talking to senior citizens, I believe, is more important, but it's very broad, very general, I believe. Diego, sorry for my interference, but wouldn't it be a little bit more operational for us to finish giving our expressions? Okay, so that we can move on to how. Very well, okay.
Alfonso, te interrumpí. Sigue.
Okay, Alfonso, I interrupted you. I
sí,
cut you
no,
off. Please,
prácticamente era,
go on.
ese era mi ejercicio, es como vernos
That was
como
practically my
organización, como
exercise
ver a la
as the
comunidad y
organization
posteriormente pasar
to
a
move
tener
the
un impacto
community
dentro de las políticas
and
a
then
las autoridades como tal.
impact the authorities per se. Okay, Sylvie, it's your turn. Yes, ma'am. I believe that it would be key to convince those who are screenplay writers from soap operas in television, because we can reach a lot of people that way. I would also like to move those who are congregated at Christian and evangelic churches, because they believe, they mobilize, they vote, they convince other people, they commit, they're committed. I believe that they are very valuable and they have a big potential of moving other people. And the third one, thinking of specific actions, I would love to move congressmen and legislators, those who are non-progressive, non-left wings, but the ones who are in the middle, the ones who are indecisive, who are on the fence, the ones who move towards the tree that gives them the best shadow, a shade, sorry. So I believe those three groups would be persuasible and convincible. Who else wants to participate?
Voy yo.
Me.
Mujeres.
Women?
¿Qué quiere decir mujeres?
What do you mean by women?
No, pues mujeres. O sea,
Women?
o sea, es
All women?
no, pues sí, pues es
de la
un,
población.
That 52% of the population?
ahí ya implica
Okay, then this implies that this is now made more complex, but I believe that they have to head the list. And this is not about demagogy. This is a reality. This isn't about demagogy, it's about realities. Okay. The young people who are excluded, not the ones who attend universities or that have formal jobs in call centers, but those who are unemployed, the ones who walk the corners on the streets, the ones who smoke pot on the streets in the afternoons because they have no other place to go, and the unemployed ones. I believe that it all goes through this second person that we're going to dance with. This second person that I'm going to dance with has to go through the process of being a person with a potential of compassion towards my personal pains too. So it's very important to meet each other. And I believe that the first people we need to approach are people from the financial social strata one, not just the same who mobilize and organize in left-wing movements, which are always the same suspects, the usual suspects. Um, we need somebody to seduce or captivate the big portion of society. Um, I'm working this from the perspective of, I mean, who is interested in participating? Who's never participated because they don't like it or because they've never been summoned, because they're marginalized. So we talk about women, the kids, and the unemployed. I don't know if you watched today the news of a congressman or a politician, one of those that declared that the equitative lists was going to generate problems, terrible problems in terms of intellectual capacities, um, because women cannot respond the same way as men. And it was the parity, the equity of genders at the Congress. And his arguments were completely crazy. So basically, we need to talk to women, to those women, to excluded young people, and to those who are unemployed, because they're usually ignored as well. And all of them go through the same variables, the variables of the war on drugs, police brutality, and state abuse.
Muy bien.
Very well.
¿Quién más?
Yo,
Mark.
sí,
Anybody else? Mark? Yes.
pues para mí hay
Well,
muchos
for me,
y especialmente
there are
los
many,
con poder.
especially those with
Pero
power in
para mí la
society.
pregunta más importante
But for me, the most important
no es
question
por qué luchamos,
isn't
sino
about
para quién
what are we
luchamos.
fighting, but
Y para mí lo más
who are
importante
we fighting for? And
con
especially for
respecto
me,
al derecho a la igualdad,
is
tenemos
how
que
does it,
empezar con
okay,
nuestros
in order
vecinos
to get respect for the right
y
to the
así
city, we
podemos
need to
empezar
start with our
poco
neighbors
a
and
avanzar.
on the level of our own neighborhoods.
Cuando vemos
Because when we
los
see
abusos policiales en la calle,
police brutality on the
cosas que
streets
pasan,
or the things that
tenemos
happen,
que construir un
we need
frente
to
grande
build a front
dentro del barrio
within our
para
neighborhoods
aumentar el poder
and increase
a ese
power
nivel.
on
Y
that
el
level.
otro grupo pues hay
And
muchos,
another group,
es
well, the
para
other
formar
would be, there are
una
many, but the
alianza
other group is to create an alliance,
interseccional, ¿no? Con
an
todas las
intersectional
poblaciones
alliance
que son
with
afectadas
different groups that are normally
por
affected
los
by
abusos policiales.
police brutality and
Los que
abuse.
se cae
For
son
example, the
los
homeless,
estudiantes y detrás
students,
de las manifestaciones
students at the
todos
manifestations,
las
demonstrations, the
víctimas
poor people,
para mostrar que ese
so as to
maltrato
show that
afecta a
that
todos
dynamics is
y que
affecting
tenemos que
many
ser
people.
una frente más popular.
So we must have a more popular front.
Perfecto.
Perfect.
¿Quién más?
Who else?
Kenia, Estefanía,
Kenya,
Juan,
Stefania, Juan,
Margarita,
Margarita,
Tiago,
Tiago,
Marcela,
Marcela,
Faisal,
Faisal.
Hola,
Hello.
¿me
Estefanía.
escuchan?
Hi,
Estefanía.
Stefania. Can you hear me?
Estefanía.
Estefania.
Estefanía.
Bueno, creo que hay un grupo
I believe there's a very important group of youngsters who are moved, who have a democratic trend, that are intuitive, but they haven't been able to access a political training or development. So they are offended by everything that's happening in the country, but they do not connect these events with their everyday lives. So they must be the center of an appropriate second person that we need to move. And we must seduce them, not with a dogma, but with seducing policies. And we need to continue promoting this interest on democracy, because in Colombia, being a Democrat is practically understood as being a left wing militant, because whoever believes in democracy is in danger, and they're attempted against simply for looking for scenarios of participation, because they're protesting against multinational companies exploiting the ground in some territories. And so people who are afraid of participating, like in Ciudad Bolivar, to protest against the damage on the environment, this is the sector that must be approached. Those youngsters that have um, democratic trends and who are progressive, and they're not very far from being seduced quickly. I think they are close to us. So I think they should be the first sector that we need to move. Thank you.
Clave, clave, clave. ¿Quién más?
Who else?
¿Alguien más?
Anybody else?
Faisal, Kenia, Marcela,
Maybe
Margarita.
Margarita.
¿Estamos? ¿O alguien quiere
Are
hablar?
we here?
Bueno,
Tiago escribió algo. No, no,
Mark is going to talk.
solo que Tiago escribió
Tiago
algo
was
en el chat.
typing something on the chat.
muy próximo idea de Mark, fortalecer las relaciones
I
con el barrio,
believe that Mark is right. We should strengthen our relationships with people in our neighborhoods,
junto con las personas, los vecinos
along with the people, neighbors.
y las personas que habitan la calle. Muy bien. ¿Alguien más? Bueno, fíjense que lo que ustedes han dicho es muy interesante.
Ay, a mí también me faltó, perdón. Yo creo que
Sorry,
también la
I
infancia
wanted to include
es
also children,
un grupo
boys and girls.
para
That's also a sector that we need to
tener en
move
cuenta.
and that we need to take
Me
into
parece importante
account.
también.
I think it's important
Genial,
too. Yes, great,
genial.
great.
Yo creo que lo que ustedes han dicho es
I
muy
believe that what
importante.
you've said is very important
Nosotros
because
estamos
of
acá.
this. We are right here. This is where we
¿Estamos en el
stand.
mouse?
Can you see my mouse indicator?
El puntero del mouse, sí, señor.
Yes, sir, your mouse indicator.
Yo diría, están los jóvenes.
I would say that the youngsters stand here,
Con lo que ustedes
and the
dicen,
young people,
un pálpito democrático. Como jóvenes
young people who have that democratic trend, as you said, people who are
de irrupción,
possible, which are have the possibility to disrupt,
y que están un poquito indignados.
and who are a little bit offended.
Yo no sé si serían los segundos o
I
alguien
don't
más
know if
después.
they would be the second person or if they are part of our first person of our organization.
O sea, voy a poner
That's
un
a little
ejemplo.
bit tough
Serían
to
los de la
differentiate.
mesa de diálogo de
For
Verbena.
example, the kids from the work group in Berbernal, we don't need to
Y los
convince
cautivamos
them
a que bailen,
or
sino que van a
captivate
bailar de
them
una.
to dance. They're going to participate in this dance, just like that.
Los jóvenes de Tunjuelito,
The young people from
Tunjuelito
Tunjuelito,
Ambiental,
from a movement, a
grafiteros, qué sé
group
yo,
in
grafiteros,
Tunjuelito,
olvídense.
the graffiti writers,
Entonces esos hay que
graffiti
moverlos ya.
artists. They're here, but we need to move them
Acá,
now.
¿quién más está que ustedes han dicho?
Who
Todo
else
lo que he
that
dicho
you
está
have mentioned?
quedando grabado, ¿cierto?
Everything I say is being recorded, right? Because then we will forget about this. Who else is here? All the people who have been victims of police brutality in a broader sense, but more precisely, those who have been victims of murders, police brutality regarding drugs. And this is a huge assignment, and it's to get together and to conjure, to summon other people, to invite other people along with them, and to have them up clear and to see how we're going to invite other people. Because there are people who don't want to be invited, and that is legitimate. But how are we going to go about this? We're here, we're right here. This is where we stand. But there's a diversity here that are unarticulated. So, how can we articulate them, link them? Because they're going to help us move. They're not the ones that we're going to move, they're the ones who are going to help us move other people. The community organizations. I believe that all of it is here. Boys and girls, they're here. Without using them as instruments or perceiving them as instruments, because we cannot do that. We cannot be perverse, but boys and girls are very important. That's key. But you mentioned three ideas that I believe are very important so that this group, so all of this group will move the group in the middle so that they move the other group. Okay, communication media, mass media. So with the route that we can create here, that which we have not defined yet, and the agenda, the opinion, and everything we're going to say, but we should have an assembly right here now that we're in Zoom with five different networks or media from other countries to invite them for a communication activity. 5 or 10 networks or media from other countries. Very important, important media. Okay, in Colombia, for example, Caracol, RCN, El Tiempo, El Espectador. To set an example, Caracol, RCN, El Espectador, El Tiempo. Okay, and then we embark them right here on this journey. And do the same with the media from other countries. And with the media, as Sylvie said, but also with the three screenplay writers. What was the name of, for example, his senator, Gustavo Bolivar, has a lot of influence. The one who makes movies, the Joanna Beaumont's husband, that's Simon Brandt. Three key screenplay writers in each country. Oh, okay, you approach them and you tell them, I have this idea. Okay, what idea? That's what we have to create today and precise today. And this idea has to be expressed in a sentence and it cannot be explained. If we explained the idea, it wouldn't make any sense. If we need to express an idea and then explain it, and we need to express a 40-second idea, we lose because we do not captivate anyone. So I have an idea. This idea must be so strong that it would make people turn their heads and say, wow. With communication media and screenplay writers, okay, the strength of this is that this should happen in all of Latin America. So this is simply a first forum of many. This is merely beginning. And in January, there should be 20. I don't know, Mark, Marcela, Silvi, Gabo, Kenya. Okay, January 20th, an easy assignment. I need 5 months media with from all Latin America with the main screenplay writers to expound to them an idea regarding police brutality, the right to the city, and this is what we have to say. This is what we have to phrase. But but also, who are the Sara Castellanos of Latin America? Who are the Mira parties of Latin America? Who are the Gloria Estela Diaz's? And we have to talk to them. And with Sara Castellanos, for example, we can talk to them. We cannot just approach her directly and tell her, let's legalize heroin right now. And please, let's smoke marijuana. Let's all excessively smoke marijuana. But it would be complex, yes, of course, to talk like this. But we can bring up the subject. She's a woman who knows how to listen. And I must say this very painfully, she beat me. This woman beat me. She has a lot of votes. She mobilizes people very much. But we need to define the strategy because it's very important. And they are, I mean, the power of that idea lies in the fact that media, if we embark them on this journey, they will be brutally impactful. They will have a brutal impact. They shouldn't feel that we're imposing an agenda on them, but they have to participate. And the churches that are here in the middle, sorry, in this sector, okay, those churches can move this line, can broaden up the space, but we need to figure out how. But everybody has their own idea of the right to the city. So we can use that as an entrance. Okay, now there's a very clear campaign arising right here, a very clear campaign. And it's this. Did you already talk to your neighbor? It's getting late and it's Christmas. Did you pray with your neighbor? Did you pray nativity with your neighbor? Okay, then pray the nativity, the danceable ceremony. I don't know if we're going to take Marcela's big joint to that meeting, but this is what we have to focus on now. Did you talk to your neighbor already? Did you assemble people in the neighborhood? Let's have a conversation. And this is a brutal idea, but we have to do this now before December 31st. I'm not kidding. Let's take some chairs and invite the people and we start talking. What is the thing about marijuana? The facilitator has to be an expert, has to have a lot of knowledge and feedback. We need somebody who has feedback, not somebody who's going to stigmatize. But you know a lot more about this than I do. But that's how you should focus this. What is the problem with marijuana? I would like to know the death rate caused by marijuana. Okay, the New York Times headlines: 100 people die from marijuana consumption. That never happens. Okay. On the contrary, from a liver disease, how many people are dead from liver disease? So let's start creating conversations. Have you already spoken to your neighbor? So I must finish this workshop. I'll smoke a cigarette. I really want to light it. And then I go towards the neighbor. He's a chemical pharmaceutical professional. And his wife is a dentist and they have kids. But that could be a design. I invite you to talk about drugs. I don't know how to do it, how to go about this, but that idea I believe is very good. And also the strategy of boys and girls. And the other one that must be accomplished, thank you, Mark, is a mapping of everybody in the cities, the groups, the sectors in the cities that have been victims of police brutality. So we have accomplished to organize uh, at the human rights office of the district, since our personal offices, since our organizations, from our organizations, people from San Mateo from September 9th, 10th, and 11th, and from November 21st. But the victims, but how are we going to group them without generating false expectations? What is the main goal of this? What is the purpose of this? And the purpose is, let's add more people. Our goal is very clear, and is that not to lose what we have accomplished so far. We want you to participate so that you can move other people. That has to be clear. We cannot generate false expectations. So these people here are just as quotidian, as common as us, as we are. Here, the ones who stand here are the ones who act because we're crazy, because we know about this. But these people have suffered and they will embark on this journey if we know how to convince them. Here we have the Christians, here we have mass media, and we have the neighborhood people.
Diego, hay un
Yes or no?
comentario de Estefanía en el chat que
Diego,
dice
there's a
que
comment from Stefania at the chat. I think it's difficult to move corporate media like Caracol and RCN when they have a corporate agenda and political agenda very well defined. And they do not function as an abstract, but as big corporations. That's completely different to moving reporters with democratic trends. But if we know how to present, I understand, Stefania, but if we know how to present this problem, then we will be successful. I direct workshops, but being a councilman is really difficult. You're absolutely right, Stefania. But something that I learned from Ivan Cepeda is that you must speak to the mass media too, to the big mass media, not because of the show or for shock value, but it's because that's where you can speak and reach a big number of people, where you can make the public actually be public. If we know how to express it, the message will the message will reach. There are reporters that I know from Caracol that are very sensitive to this matter. I was very surprised because you say, okay, the W radio, oh, they're so conservative, one would think, but in the live conference that I did with the mothers and W radio with Calvas and Camila, some people said they're so mean. I wish they die. I wish, and the W radio on that debate, okay, they set a democratic guideline. They said, oh wait, no, we're not going to say that. And that debate was very important. In Blue Radio, the same thing happened. Not all of them thought the same way, of course. But I believe that if we are able to express it correctly, we cannot go against them directly. That's not an option. But, well, that's an option, sorry. Or the other option is without being uh, the other is how do we make this a public agenda?
Yo pondría el ejemplo de
And soap operas and the screenplay writers.
Narcos.
I was using the example of Narcos, the TV series, because my experience here in Brazil is that people don't know anything about Colombia. The FARC, the peace agreement, war, what? They don't know anything. But they're completely solidary with Pablo Escobar. Totally. And that is because of Narcos, the TV series that was in HBO, Netflix, and many other networks. And it created that. And they were more interested in it. The media were interested in playing this series because it raised a lot of money. But then, as Colombian citizens, we will never feel for Pablo Escobar. We'll never be moved by him. But the way his story is presented in that series is very different. So this isn't about, as you said, Diego, this isn't about having a left-wing speech. No, no, no. We need to be familiar with those stories that move. We need to be familiar with these neighborhood stories. I don't know if you saw this, but there's a TV series that Netflix put out. It's called Hermandagi Fraternity, and how policemen worked in the prisons of Brazil. And the vision is how the war in drugs is unfair and how the victims are the favela kids, the neighborhood kids. So there are several ways to tell these stories, and which besides uh, can yield these earnings that corporate is interested in. But it's important to do it that way because it makes people sensitive. It has a strong impact.
Colombia, está Brasil, ¿quién más está?
Okay, there's Colombia, Brazil. Who else? Washington. Is anybody here from the United States? What other countries can we reach easily, directly?
Combos, digamos, la gente que
Sectors, let's say, groups.
Pues
Mexico is here in this
dentro
encounter.
de las organizaciones que
Well, within the context of organizations,
están México, Brasil,
Mexico, Brazil, Puerto
Estados
Rico,
Unidos y Colombia.
the United States, and Colombia.
ya con eso, digamos, uno tiene
Okay, with this, let's say we already have something.
México,
If
Brasil,
we organize a
Puerto
group
Rico,
from Mexico, Brazil, uh,
tema del derecho al
Puerto
sitio,
Rico, United
¿quién
States,
habrá?
regarding the right to the city, this will be very bold,
Tener en
audacious.
cuenta también que, por ejemplo,
But also, we
en
must consider,
Brasil
Diego, that in
hay
the case of
organizaciones
Brazil,
fuertes
there are very strong organizations, something
digamos,
that
de
they call
resistencia
resistance
en torno
community,
al seguimiento
through
de los
communication,
casos
resistance
policiales,
communication towards the matter
en
of
general
police abuse,
criminalización de
and in
personas
general with the criminalization of people
¿sí?
who are
Y
homeless.
el otro es el de, digamos, lo que hacen
And the other
en
aspect
Puerto Rico,
is
kilómetro
what they do
cero,
in Puerto Rico, zero
que tienen unas
kilometer,
fuertes campañas de
which
divulgación y de
they have really
denunciación
strong
contra el
disclosure
abuso
campaigns
policial
and
y
reporting
son
campaigns against
personas
police
diálogo
brutality.
que tienen
So
que
they're
hacer este
allies
ejercicio
that
de
we have inside this
protección.
exercise, within this exercise, and they're very important.
Entonces,
They're
por eso,
key.
generar esos aliados es clave.
So generating these alliances is key.
Ya empezamos a aterrizar. ¿Quiénes son los
So
aliados?
now we're
Hay que
starting
saberlo
to
primero.
bring this to the ground.
Ese
Who
mapa
are our allies? Who should we
claro,
speak with
empezar a
first?
tejer
We
la
must be very
tecnología,
clear on
la
this
ingeniería de
so that
esa
we can
política pública.
start designing the engineering of this political action.
Exacto. Entonces, por ejemplo,
Exactly. So, for example,
o sea, esas dos
those
organizaciones,
two
lo que yo
organizations
vi es que en campañas
in
como tal
campaigns
son
per
claves en
se
el marco
are
de lo que nos
key
estás proponiendo
within the
aquí,
framework of what you are
¿sí?
proposing to us in this
Por ejemplo,
workshop.
decirlo, por ejemplo, en materia
And that must be
de
said
campaña
too.
que hace temblores,
For
también tiene
example,
que ver con
campaigns that
comunicación,
are directed by the
principalmente,
media
por
that
supuesto,
are
pero además hay que
impactful.
salir de las redes sociales, es
Also,
decir,
we need to exit social media. We need to go beyond social
una de las
networks.
soluciones.
This has higher
De acuerdo,
dimensions. I agree.
de acuerdo.
I
¿Les parece si
agree.
damos un pasito más adelante?
Do you agree with stepping forward a little bit? Yes.
¿Sí?
Let's do it.
Sí, Diego, vamos.
Yes,
Digamos,
Diego.
digamos.
Okay, let's continue with this.
Nosotros ya tenemos claro quiénes van a ser nuestros principales
So we're
aliados,
clear on who are going to be our next allies in action. It's young
adultos
people,
mayores,
senior citizens,
organizaciones de la comunidad.
community organizations.
Y deberíamos convencer de manera
And we
colectiva
should be able
a
to
los
collectively
medios
convince, at least for
de
Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, the United States, and Puerto Rico,
medios de comunicación
some
profesionales,
media,
libretistas,
okay, screenplay writers,
organizaciones cristianas a hablar de esto.
Christian organizations, and we should invite
Entonces
them
les vamos
for
a
the
plantear
debate.
una idea que
Nothing would be
les
lost.
quiero plantear enseguida.
There is an idea that I would like to propose to you now.
Y también congresistas tibios a mi toque.
And also for those who are indecisive, who don't know where they stand.
Congresistas que no son ni
Congressmen who don't know where they
izquierdistas
stand, that they are not left wing
ni
nor
derechistas ni tibios.
right wing, but who stand in the middle, somewhere in the middle.
Gabo está que se habla y da nombres propios. Él ya está
No,
pensando
no
en
es fácil,
Gabo
hermano.
wants to talk, but okay, it's
Es
very
fácil
easy to
denominar
determine
los políticos tibios.
No, no te vayas a meter con mi
those
partido, por favor.
No, no, no,
those
no,
indecisive
no, no,
politicians. It's very easy to identify them. Oh, please do not mess with my political party. No, no, I'm not going to do that, good man.
por supuesto.
But of
Y
course,
digamos que a mí me interesa es
let's
que
say
no
that I'm interested in
olvidar
not
el hecho de que
losing
estamos aquí
focus on the
centrados
fact that
en
we are here
la defensa de
centered
nuestras
on
naciones, ¿no?
the
Por ejemplo,
political
hay días
war
que
on
si uno
drugs.
empieza, cambian, no
And
cambian.
then the levels of indecisiveness change.
Perdón, te interrumpo, Gabo, entonces.
And sorry to interrupt you, sorry to cut you off, Gabriel,
La idea que dice
but
Gabo
the
es
idea
importante.
is very
Es
clear. Your idea is very clear.
guerra
Watch
política
out.
contra las drogas. Eso ya es absolutamente
Political
claro.
war on drugs.
Yo me voy donde Mauricio Toro.
So I will go to Mauricio Toros.
Por ejemplo,
Me voy donde
exactamente.
For
Juanita Jubertus.
example, okay, I visit Juanita
Me
Jubertus.
voy donde. Bueno,
So
Iván
I
Marulanda
visit,
sí podría coger esta. Me
okay,
voy
Ivan
donde
Marulanda,
Gabriel Santos.
Gabriel Santos.
Gabriel Santos.
Me voy donde Gabriel Santos. Le digo,
So I
vamos a
visit
iniciar
Gabriel
una
Santos and
política
I
de
tell
guerra
him,
contra las drogas. Yo no he terminado
let's
la frase
start a
y ya lo
political
perdí.
war on drugs.
Ya lo
I
perdí.
haven't finished the sentence and I lost him. He already
No he
left.
No,
terminado
pues
la
por
frase y
supuesto.
esto ya se fue.
I haven't finished the sentence and he already left.
Claro.
Entonces, ¿cuál es la idea que
So
nosotros
what is the
necesitamos decir
idea
para
that we need to
acabar
communicate
con la
so
droga?
that this guy stays and wants to stay?
No, 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 no. Y eso señala Marcela en el chat.
No, that's what Marcela said
Estamos
in the
hablando de
chat.
políticos
Contextualizar político porque
de
no todo el mundo
derechas.
que es
We're talking about right-wing
típico
politicians.
Sí,
político, hijo de un político
I would say the typical
de
politician,
historia,
del fin.
ya
a child of a
alguien
historic
que le
politician
puede hablar, que
Pues
puede ser sensible a estos temas,
that you can talk to that can be very sensitive in these
como
matters,
yo que soy muy joven.
young, like myself,
sí,
that I'm
estamos
very
hablando
young.
concretamente, digamos, del ejemplo
Entonces,
Yes,
concreto
we're
de Ciudad
concretely
Diego,
tengo
Gabriel
a la
Santos.
lideresa cristiana,
about Gabriel Santos, for example.
tengo al congresista del perfil que acabo de decir,
Okay, I have the congressman of the profile that I just
tengo
described.
a el jefe de medios importantes del país,
Okay, I have
libretista de libretistas,
the chief of media, most important chief of media in the country, and the screenplay writer, most important screenplay writer in the country, and we must captivate them
la idea de Gabo es muy clara,
with an
guerra
idea.
política contra las drogas.
Gao's idea is very clear. Political war on drugs, that's a very clear idea. But is that what we must say? I'm not sure.
Es respaldar,
Because what
persuadir,
we need to say is to support,
atraer,
persuade, move,
contagiar.
attract,
¿Cuál es
contage.
la idea que nosotros tenemos que decir
What
con
is the idea that we must
responsabilidad?
transmit? Sorry for being so rude. In two sentences
Logremos
at the
sacar y
most.
escribir
Two sentences top.
la proposición del fundamento de
If
Hamilton,
we can get to
perdimos.
write that preposition,
O el
we
fundamento
lost.
de Aristóteles, ya perdimos.
If we write something long like the Zeta book of
¿Cuál es la idea que
Aristotle, then we
tenemos que
lost.
decirle
What is the idea that we must
al
communicate to the people to captivate them so that they feel supported?
que sea acogedor, que sea
Something that doesn't sound boring but moving,
que convoque,
persuasive, for
que
them
sea
to add and convoke and be authentic,
recurrente,
something that's authentic and spontaneous.
que muestre seguridad? ¿Cuál es esa idea frente a lo que estamos discutiendo?
What is that idea?
El tema de la política de drogas, para ponerlo en términos generales, y la brutalidad policial. ¿Cuál
The
es la
topic of
idea
police
que nosotros
brutality
queremos mostrar? ¿Cuál es
and
esa
the
idea?
political
Vamos a
drug,
reducir daños,
political war on drugs. What is the purpose? To reduce the damage.
y me dormía.
Le tengo que leer
Okay,
el libro de
with
los tres
if you
principios.
mention that, I fall asleep.
15 años tratando de
I've
entender
been
eso gracias a
trying to
ustedes, Gabo,
understand
todavía me cuesta.
this for 15 years, thanks to Gabo and Marcela, and I still struggle to understand it.
Una idea.
Please, an idea. Give me one idea.
Yo voy a ser muy degenerado.
I'm gonna be very rude.
Una idea de Álvaro Uribe Vélez, seguridad
An
democrática.
idea from Álvaro Uribe Vélez.
Ya, no hay que explicar.
Democratic security. What was the meaning of that?
Una
Okay,
idea de Gilmar
bullets
Mendoza,
on FARC guerrilla
respeto,
fighters.
respeto,
That's
ya,
it.
a estos violadores.
Okay, somebody else. Life imprisonment for the or child rapists. That's an idea,
Otro ejemplo
and
de
it sells. I'm citing or quoting examples from the far right wing
nosotros vamos a
intentionally. What are we going to say? What is it that we're going to say?
Si quieren la escriben, ¿les parece? Es un
Can
ejercicio
you write it?
que estoy planteando.
It's a very easy exercise that I'm proposing.
Si quieren la escriben, ¿les parece?
Can you write it?
Sí, hágale.
Gabo, no es para montártela, ¿no? O sea, no puede
Gao,
ser
this is not to bully you,
política contra las drogas.
but the idea cannot sound like political war on drugs because that's too harsh.
Ya se fueron.
So I haven't finished saying that sentence, and half the people who are listening to me will leave. But it must be something really interesting and something aligned with our goals. Then what we want is reduction of the damage. Because I need to complete certificate studies, but that's not what I need. What I need is for people to connect, to join us. What is this idea that will set this country dancing around it with all the properties that you said, all the features that you mentioned? An idea that is captivating so that I can go tomorrow to Sara Cantellano's office. She's a Christian councilwoman of Bogota. Listen, Sarita, I have this idea for you. Okay, when's the meeting? Something that captivates her like that. Something that could capture Andrés Forero's attention, who is a militant from Centro Democrático, Álvaro Uribe's party. That's a brutal image. Okay, Haiti, she's a left wing, and Sara Castellanos, who is Christian. You know, that's an impressive stage. But for them to sit together, we need a strong idea. If I go to Sara Castellanos and I say political drug on wars, and she will fight. It's Cancino just wants to talk to Sara Castellanos. I've just realized that what he wants. Well, actually, that's my excuse. Marcela, please focus on the sentence, please. I think Kenya is proposing an interesting idea, and it's the idea that we need to approach because the fight on the political war on drugs is that the argument is that children are the ones who are most affected by this war. And there is a study conducted by a Mexican professional, and it measured the impact that the war on drug has on children. And just like Kenya says, we all want our children live. We want our children to be alive. And it's inspired in Bertolt Brecht. And yes, it's to move, to feel compassion. This study is not only quantitative, but also qualitative, because there are interviews on children who have parents in prison because of crimes, drug-related crimes that do not pose violent crimes or murders. It's simply for carrying the drug or selling it. But the impact that this imprisonment of their parents has had on these children, and because evidently in our country, most of the family heads are women. So when women are are entered into prison because of these drug-related crimes, this has a stronger impact because their children are now alone or left alone. When a man is in prison, well, the woman stays at home taking care of the children. But if it's the mom, okay, then I believe that this is something really strong. That's something a good letter of presentation. I think that this is important, and what you're clarifying is very good. But I would like to hear more
Bueno,
sentences.
la mía es
Well, mine
más
is
colombiana, ¿no? Y más de
it's a little bit more
de la
street-based
realidad colombiana.
and based on
Pues
Colombian
sí, en mi país,
reality.
por ejemplo, pues todos tenemos un colino en la familia, ¿sí?
And that aim, we can say that we all have
Todos, o sea,
what?
todos y todas tenemos la
We
experiencia
we all have the
de,
experience
por
of
supuesto que me parece fabulosa la que
in our
tienen
families.
los
Okay.
niños y las niñas,
I believe that
pero
the
me parece
children idea is
fundamental
fabulous,
el estudio que está
but
planteando
also to
Caro,
make this exercise
para mí también era
dynamic,
clave en algún momento y es,
this is key for
todos
me.
tenemos
And
un colino en la familia.
we all have a drug user in our family. I believe it's a good idea, Gabo, um,
¿Cuál,
but
cuál es la pregunta?
what is your question? We all doesn't that sound like we all have a black sheep in our family? Because I think we would be stigmatizing. Yes, I
No,
believe the same. I think
estamos
it's
bien explicados,
stigmatizing.
¿sí? Pero
Yes, of course, very well.
que también cuando uno la mira bien,
Okay, I have no
uno
objections.
eventualmente puede apelar a ello, pero esto lo que hace en ese sentido,
But in that sense, what this
No,
sentence does is,
yo lo traduciría en esto
I
y
would
usted
translate it like
es
this.
un colino en potencia.
You are a drug user. You're a potential drug
ah,
user.
bueno, o sea, ese tipo de
Um,
expresiones, de
well,
mensajes
like
son
kind of
directamente que van
expressions
hacia eso,
or
¿no? Como un
ideas have the
ejercicio
same aim.
político como
And
para
then this exercise of
este tipo de
looking and getting
expresiones
into a
y de
campaign,
Todo el
mensajes.
mundo
we
es
have to use this kind of
drug user,
information.
de los restos sí.
Okay, then everybody's a drug user, potential drug user, not myself, but the rest of the people are.
Eh,
A mí me salió un
bueno, yo
graffiti.
los estoy anotando y los vamos evaluando. Quédense en eso.
A mí me salió como un graffiti.
Okay, mine came out as graffiti.
La mata no mata, la policía sí.
Okay, plant doesn't kill, police, the law enforcement kills.
Pero ese es un graffiti, ese es un graffiti. Un graffiti brutal.
A
Pero
brutal
digamos,
graffiti, but that's graffiti. But I cannot go to Gano, the director of Espectador, or to the CEO of RCN. We cannot connect with them with that sentence. Okay, that graffiti must be painted somewhere. It's brutal.
está brutal. ¿Quién más? Alfonso, Magda,
Who else? Alfonso,
Estefanía.
Magda, Stefania,
Mark se fue.
Mark. Did Mark leave? I thought of something like, okay, enjoying life or staying together in life,
Pero eso es más para trabajar con
hanging out
niños.
together in life. Okay, that slogan is better to work with kids. Well, since the expression hanging out together means being in a group, not necessarily young people, but anybody, come be with us, come join us because we're all fighting for life. So I don't know if we can use the word hanging out.
Me parece brutal. Me
I
parece brutal,
think
pero
it's
vamos
excellent,
a decir, acordémonos que nosotros vamos
but
a
just
ir
like Sylvie,
a la cristiana
remember that we're going to approach the Christian congressman or
hijo
congresswoman
político de
uh,
Compras de
who
Silvia
is the son or daughter of another politician, an old politician,
y al director.
to strong mass media and to screenplay
Porque si
writers.
no lo cogemos en la primera frase,
And that if
vamos a
we
perder
don't
con ellos.
capture this person in the first sentence, they will disconnect and we'll
No
lose
quiere
them.
decir que lo excluyamos, Magda.
I'm not excluding your sentence,
Están
Magda,
saliendo varias cosas que
but
hacemos.
several things are arising, and I think
Pero
they're very important.
que interpreto a la luz de lo que ustedes están
And
diciendo.
I'll tell you later my interpretation of what you're saying.
No sé si alguien más quiere hablar. Alfonso,
I
Juan,
don't know if anybody else wants to talk. Alfonso, Juan,
Yo,
Kenia. Sí que hubo, Alfonso.
sí, disculpa, yo comparto mucho la idea
okay,
con
Alfonso,
Kenia
I share
sobre
the idea, Kenya's idea
el eslogan que, bueno,
of
esta
the
parte que
slogan.
dice todos
This
queremos a
part says
nuestros
that
hijos
we all want
vivos.
our children alive.
Sí, porque
We want our
siento
children
que no solo
alive
engloba como a los pequeños, o sea, pequeñas, sino que también
because
a,
it doesn't encompass only little
a
children, but
personas que tal vez
people.
tengan o hayan muerto por sobredosis, por
People who
ejemplo.
have died
Entonces es cierto
from an
que
overdose.
pueda abarcar a un
So I
rango
think
más
this
amplio, no
can
solo a
entail or
pequeños.
encompass a
Y,
broader
pero por otro
range
lado
of
también
people.
me da una tremenda hueva
But on
el
the
hecho
other
de tener que
hand,
explicarle a los políticos, a gente tomadora de decisiones, el qué tengan
it
que
kills
hacer
me
o,
to have to
o por qué
explain
tenerlos que enganchar
this
cuando
to
ya deberían de
politicians and
estar
police officers and people.
metidos en el
Why
tema y
should I
estar
have to
trabajando
convince them
por las
when they
comunidades,
should
¿no? Pero
already be
bueno,
convinced and be
yo comparto
working for
más
the
esa
communities?
idea.
But okay, I share Kami's idea.
Estamos de acuerdo, Alfonso. Tienes toda la razón.
I agree with you,
Es
Alfonso.
simbólico, pero
You're completely right. It should be a conviction, but
también es una realidad política que yo creo
it's a
que
political
es
reality
duro reconocerla, pero pues
that is hard to acknowledge, but we cannot deny it.
o sea, nuestro reto es hablarle a los
Our
que
challenge is to talk
pueden
to
oír,
those
pero
who
no tienen
can
en su
listen
agenda.
but don't have these ideas in their agenda.
O sea, pongo un ejemplo, Alfonso. O sea, los derechos laborales deberían ser
Okay,
absolutamente interiores
let me give you an
y no
example.
aparecen los políticos.
Labor law,
Pero
sorry,
ese
labor rights should be imposed on
una
everybody.
incidencia
Sorry.
comunicativa y política muy importante desde
But
el
for
punto de
example,
vista
the Actors Union had a very important accomplishment,
avanzar
and they attracted
reconciliaciones
congressmen, and they were able to make progress because they put that in the agenda.
como esos nos sirven
So experiences like that,
para
like
pensar en la
those,
incidencia que debería existir. Yo estoy de acuerdo
should be an example for us to think.
lamentablemente
But unfortunately,
estamos en una sociedad que no es
we're on a non-democratic
y lo podemos
society.
multiplicar como queremos nuestros nietos vivos, queremos nuestros
And
primos
then
vivos,
it can be multiplied as we want our grandchild children living, we want our brothers and sisters alive, we want
hermanos,
our
hermanas, hermanas.
grandchildren alive, brothers and sisters want their brothers and sisters alive.
Muy bien, Alfonso.
All right, Alfonso.
¿Cómo es? El perdón por la vida no, sino el qué, el por,
Let's see what?
¿cómo era? El,
What was the idea? The previews? Okay, hanging out for life.
¿quién más quiere intervenir? Marcela, Juan,
Who else wants to participate?
Yo ya intervine, pero usted me mandó a callar.
I already participated, but you shushed me.
intervino
You shushed me. You hushed me.
para moverse, para sumarse a Kenia.
Okay, no, you participated to add to Kenya's, but do you have a sentence of your own?
Es que yo no logro construir frases. A mí ese
Is
chipeo
it,
me motiva, pero quedando bien.
I
Sin
cannot
títulos para
put up
enseñar
sentences or
lenguaje,
coin
sin páginas.
sentences. I don't have that skill. I wasn't born with that skill.
Bueno, no sé si alguien quiera.
I don't have that
Lo
chip.
primero es que yo creo que aquí salió un graffiti que habría que hacerlo.
Okay, the first thing is that I believe that a very interesting graffiti was born here and we need to paint it, and I will help. There are people who can design. I know a lot of people who are designers and who can do it greatly. Let's design it and let's write it. And in Facebook backgrounds and Twitter, let's try to do that in Brazil. Let's try to do it in Mexico. And Marcela Gabo y yo will take care of it here in Bogota. Um, I hope with the same sentence. Well, to convince them to use the same sentence is going to be difficult because they will want to use their own. But I think this is brutal. Construction of a video from graffiti artists in many different walls in different cities of the country. The plant doesn't kill, the police kills.
Yo creo que ahí sale una cosa que me parece brutal.
There is something brutal.
O sea, ya hemos llegado a varios acuerdos que ya se me olvidaron todos, pero
We have reached many agreements. I forgot about them all, but I think somebody's putting them down. Somebody's putting notes down. Well, besides, uh, we are writing here all the route for next year's actions. But the plant doesn't kill, police kills, and we need to do this now. I think yesterday is late. Okay, hanging out for life, I don't see it as an idea, but as a strategy, like a purpose. Okay, let's fill the city of people hanging out for life. For example, this could be these groups, those campaigns of convince your neighbor. Those who are sitting down to talk to their neighbors to convince them. Okay, it's called hanging out for life.
Claro, claro, esa es una buena opción.
That's a good option.
digámosle a Rivas o a
Let's talk to Rivas or Pacheco. Let's try to look for reporters in each country where we launch this idea or release this idea, hanging out for life. I forget about everything I say, so please put it down. Everything is being recorded. Everything's on tape, so don't worry. I believe that it's very disruptive, and we should test it or try it. You're a drug user, you're a potential drug user, or we all have drug users in our family. I know that it's playful, but I think this could stigmatize.
Por supuesto que tienen razón en ese
Yes,
sentido.
of course, you're right in that sense. We all have an inner drug user.
todos tenemos un colino interior. Y es chévere.
And it's cool. It would be really cool to say, it would be really cool to use an Instagram circus or band with this,
Claro,
the inner drug user,
exacto, así como el amigo imaginario.
just like your imaginary friend. like promote dialogue with your inner drug user.
No, está buenísimo.
Oh, this is really good.
Daniel Samper o algún influencer
And then we could get Daniel Samper or an influencer from each country to take the slogan. We all have an inner truck user. It's really good. I only disagree with Marcela on principles,
pero la propuesta de Kenia es,
but Kenya's proposition
yo creo que
is a really good idea.
sí, o sea,
La de los niños y las niñas.
As kids, we want our
Esa es la
children alive.
propuesta. Esa es la
uno se
propuesta.
sienta
That
con
is the
alguien y dice
proposition.
esa frase ya,
Okay, you sit down with somebody and
Esa es la
you say that
propuesta.
sentence and you will turn heads immediately.
¿sí? Es muy linda porque además no es agresiva, o sea, no,
It's really beautiful because it's not aggressive. It's inclusive. It's like Bertolt Brecht's ideas.
creemos conmover, inspirar
Okay, we're abiding by the things we said. We want to move. We want to persuade.
y entonces uno debería hacer como
So we should
o de decálogo de manifiesto sobre qué quiere decir que queremos a nuestros hijos vivos.
write 10 sentences, a decalogue, 10 sentences around we want our children alive.
Eh,
I've been thinking about something the past few months because
políticas muy profundas.
uh,
Entonces un
the
manifiesto,
narrative
un decálogo, pero con una
produced a lot of cultural transformations, society transformations,
con una narrativa muy específica.
with a very specific narrative.
Además,
It could be urban narrative besides, or it could be a rap.
pero queremos a nuestros hijos vivos, me parece.
But we want our children alive, I think is wonderful.
Con eso ya
I think we've made progress,
puedo, tengo tiempo, Silvi, ¿puedo?
but do I have time to?
Tienes.
Yes, you have time to
Entonces, nosotros qué hemos
conclude.
hecho? Nosotros hemos hecho
Okay, what have we done? Let's sum up what we've done. Okay,
que sea convencida,
we need to have
sea ñoña,
determined,
alerta,
confident action,
active,
not boring. We need something to captivate,
todo desde ese 15% que
something coming from conviction, people who are strongly convinced, spontaneous and authentic, people who set examples,
que esté inspirada desde la libertad,
people who are inspired in freedom, people promoting freedom, but they must also be part of that, of those 10 rules. Uh, people who are willing to do it. Yes, somebody who's confident. There's conviction here. We're not going to be stopped by anyone. We're going to go to the end. Okay. We don't want any indecisiveness. Okay. We want people who are determined, people who are persuasive. And especially the steps to take are the indicated steps. So let's evaluate if we should talk first to the reporter or to the congressman or to the council or to the Christian people. When these how to do it will have to be very, very well thought. Because if we take a wrongful step, then this will undermine this campaign. So who should we talk to first? Should we approach first the somewhat democratic media of the country, or okay, what Stefania said? You're right, Stefania, you're right. The idea is not to move the media because it's difficult, but if we know how to use them, they can help us move other people. No, with this sentence, Stefania, I believe that we get to play a little. Those are the properties of action. And precisely what Stefania says is to move, to incite compassion, inspired by Bertolt Brecht's poem, and inspired that 70% that, by the way, is closer to us, with a series of key actors, young people, as we defined, senior citizens, community organizations, and students from public and private universities that have a democratic trend. And we want to talk to them. The second person, the second dancer we should have would be the screenplay writers of soap operas, mass media, strategic mass media, okay, weak congressmen or undecisive congressmen, and Christians who are open to this kind of debates and discussions. And what we're going to tell all of them is that we want our children alive. There are going to be parallel actions, parallel activities, like in TikTok or YouTube or anything. We all have an inner drug user. We all have a drug user in our soul. Let's do it in real life. The plant doesn't kill, the police does. That's brutal. Let's set out a strategy to talk to our neighbors, and we're going to call it hanging out for life. Okay. Okay, we want our children alive. That's what we want to do. That's the message we want to convey. Okay, that's the message we must convey for all of these people, all these 70%. Taking into consideration, there is another 15% that we've already defined. This is the percentage that we wanted to assign collective action, but not something boring, something authentic, persuasive, free, related to the body, something that is fun, okay, something that attracts, that generates community, something persuasive, strong, definite, and something that is done deliberately and willingly. Joint action, collective action. Okay, let's use our imagination. What would that collective action be? I'll give you an example. On the Caribbean coast, in order to prove that peace was fundamental, and then what they thought of, and the question was a little different, is what are we going to do to captivate those or capture those who are not convinced that peace is important, but they don't belong to Centro Democrático, Uribe's party? Well, and this idea was not developed, and we saw the results and consequences, but the idea is to start a marathon for the countryside. Okay, war led people from the countryside to the cities, and now we must return from the city to the countryside, like a marathon. But to launch that, we need at the on the final match of one of those championships, Copa America or anything. I don't know much about soccer, but on the final match of that championship in Barranquilla, and the America, the Cali team was playing. In the end, they landed a balloon and some skydivers. So when they landed, there were lots of papers launched that said, let's go back to the countryside, welcome peace. So at the final game of a championship, having that, well, it generated a lot of
Pero
noise.
pensemos que en una final
But let
mataron
us
a una
remember
policía que cayó encima de la gente y generó tremendo
that
show.
in one of them, they killed a skydiver that landed on the people. Okay, that was an objection that they placed. But we thought about other tactics. There were options, let's say. Okay. Then the President Santos called Char, who is the owner of Olímpica, Barranquilla, El Campín, El Junior, and the stadium. But let's imagine things. That's why Juan Manuel Santos could do this, because Char was the owner of all of those. But what can we do? Okay, what we need to do is this, and I'll finish with this. What we need to do is this.
Nosotros lo que necesitamos hacer
What we need to do
es esto.
this is what I propose.
Es que no me... Bueno, nosotros tenemos...
We have
Entonces, miren, nosotros
so look,
necesitamos...
we need
Nosotros tenemos,
we have this.
de alguna manera, nosotros
Somehow
necesitamos hacer una
we
acción que cambie la
need an
mentalidad.
action
Y
that
absolutamente
changes
imprevisible.
perspective. That's something that's completely unpredictable. Can you see this?
¿Qué es
Sí.
eso?
Yes.
¿Qué es
What
eso?
is it? What is it?
¿Qué es este cuadro?
Es como una...
It's like
Uy, son varias cosas. Puede
it's
verse
many
de
things.
primerazo como
On a
una
first glance,
una cosa que está sosteniendo como verduras.
you can see that something that is holding
Pero también puede ser
vegetables,
como una persona con un
but it
sombrero,
could
una
also be a
ilustración.
person with a hat. I see the cheeks, the nose, the
Algo
eyes,
más que no voy a decir.
and something else. Something else that I will not
Ahí está.
precise.
Y ahora miren,
There it is.
miren
Now
ese
look.
mismo cuadro volteado.
Now look at the same picture, but turn it
El
around.
cajón puede ser un rostro.
So actually,
Es el mismo cuadro, pero
painting
volteado.
of vegetables could be a face if you turn it around.
Es exactamente el mismo cuadro, pero volteado. Y es
It's
una
exactly the same picture, but turned
volteado.
around. That's what we have to do, turn around.
Esta acción que
We need to
de alguna manera
capsize
queremos
their
transmitir,
perspective,
queremos a nuestros hijos
turn their
vivos,
perspective around. If we want to convey a message, a very clear message, that is, we want our children alive, and we need to make that clear and make it turn heads,
espontánea, auténtica.
and a strategy that is spontaneous, authentic.
Y podemos acudir a la a lo que queramos.
We can resort to imagination or anything we like.
Entonces, de nuevo, si quieren
So again,
dibujan, la pintan, lo que
can you write it, paint it, or as you wish?
¿Sí? ¿Soy claro o no?
Did I make myself clear?
Sí, yo lo que estoy
Yes.
descubriendo es que soy
What I'm
poquito
finding out is that I'm
pensando.
not very creative.
¿Qué es lo que tenemos que pensar? Ahora me perdí.
What do we have to think about? Now I'm
Una
lost.
acción colectiva,
A joint action or collective action.
digamos, no tiene que ser como la que yo dije, pero
Not like the one I mentioned, it was just an example. Bless
una
you.
acción colectiva
A joint action
tenga las propiedades que dijimos,
that has the features that we mentioned before, that spontaneous, confident,
que esté
being born from conviction,
que tenga
something that is contagious, spontaneous, that
algo que sea divertido,
regards the body, that has support, that is fun, that is willing,
que sea libre,
that is free,
que se pueda sostener en el tiempo.
something that can be sustainable in time.
Importa algo, ¿no?
We must
Y
consider
es que el
something,
video
and it's that
se
the
hizo con COVID.
video,
Lo que vos nos mostraste al
the
comienzo
video that you
fue
showed
con
us
COVID, ¿no?
was
Con
done
COVID, entonces toca
in
ser aún más
before the
creativos
pandemics. Now we have the
y
COVID
más
pandemic, so we need to be a little bit more
Por ejemplo,
creative.
a mí, en
For
el marco de lo
example,
que vos dices, uno piensa
in the
incluso
context
cuando
you're
hace 2 o 3
saying,
meses,
wait,
que
gabo,
uno
gabo, gabo.
a los pa
No, espérame un segundito.
Sorry,
Pensemos lo
excuse me
primero
for a
y
moment.
después lo vamos expresando porque si no
Let's
se
think about it for a
desconecta
moment and then
de lo
express
que
it,
está ocurriendo.
because then you're going to bias the other ones who have not of an idea.
Gracias, Mike.
Thank you,
Y que lo
brother.
puedan hacer jóvenes o adultos mayores,
And something that can be carried out by young people, senior citizens, people from communities, and that we can easily include reporters, mass media, congressmen, politicians, etc. Something disruptive, something that turns heads, that turns around perspective or visions.
Listo.
Pues yo pensé en algo como, no
Okay,
sé,
I thought of
un
something
carnaval.
like a
Espérenme,
carnival.
espérenme, Magda.
Sorry,
Todos
Magda,
tengan
wait.
la idea. ¿Ya todos tienen la idea?
Does everybody have their
Espérame un
idea?
segundito, Magda.
So, Magda, please give me a moment. Sorry.
Don Diego, muy buenos días. Intenté marcarle, pero me mandé el mensaje por el 2. Ayer, en tanta carrera y esta cosa, yo le mandé cartas absolutamente a todo el mundo.
¿Listo?
So, you ready?
¿Listo? Bueno, si
Ready?
quieren empezamos con Magda, después Gabo y ahí vamos viendo.
Okay, let's start with Magda, then Gabo, and from then on we'll see.
La
I thought
posibilidad
of a
de que
carnival, the possibility of a carnival
porque
that I think is
pues
very
en el
interesting
carnaval
because
pues me parece
carnival
que uno se
allows
tome la calle,
for people to take
pero
the
pues que
streets.
uno cambie esas dinámicas y que
It
supremamente
allows for
generalmente
changing
la
those
gente
dynamics,
mira
and
y mira, o
carnival
sea,
makes people
hace
turn
que las
around
personas
and
se
look and
detengan
take a
y
look,
hay
makes people
posibilidad de
stop.
música, de
There's the
danza,
possibility of
de
music,
muchas más
dancing,
cosas.
and all of those expressions.
Pero por supuesto el
But
carnaval
of
también
course,
puede ser
carnival's
muy
also
crítico.
something very
Entonces,
critical.
no sé,
So
pensaría
I
que
don't know. I thought of
sería
it.
como acto colectivo, ¿no?
I thought of it as a collective action.
Chévere, listo. Muy bien, Magda.
That's cool.
Gabo,
Okay, Gabo.
No sé, o sea, pensándolo en términos de lo que
Well,
los
thinking in
próximos 3 meses,
terms of the following
a mí
next
me parece
three
muy
months,
clave
I think
explotar,
it's key
o
to
más que clave
exploit,
es
or
aprovechar
more than to exploit, to take
el,
advantage of
la vuelta, entre comillas, los niños a los colegios supuestamente en presencialidad,
of
¿no?
the
Entonces,
fact that kids are going to
esto pues
school
sería bien interesante
virtually.
porque
This would be very
pues,
shocking.
un año sin venir al colegio
They
y
were
después
out of school for a year and then they
empezar
returned
a
to
tratar
school,
de
and
eh,
they precisely to try to
reconfigurar todo este
reconfigure
tema de
and
conciencia
change
de la guerra contra las
the
drogas,
perspective
etcétera,
on the war
pues
on
podría
drugs.
ser, ¿no? Sí,
I
no
think
sé,
it could be
aprovechar ese escenario
to
y
take
poder hacer
advantage of
cosas
that
como lo que
scenery, of
hacen
that
con la
situation.
venta
I
de
don't know where
Victorino,
uh,
en fin, o sea, podría
school
ser,
aids and tools are bought in San Victorino.
¿y ahí qué
pero
se haría,
aprovechar ese
Could be,
momento, ¿no? O sea,
but we need to exploit this moment.
ahí qué deberíamos hacer, Gabo?
es que,
What could we do
uy,
then,
no, es que
Gabo?
se pueden hacer,
Well,
bueno, unas cosas y unas
I'm
cosas,
thinking of many things. It could be
cambiar de eso,
crazy,
pero por ejemplo, a mí me parece
but I think it's
clave
key
recrear
to
con,
recreate
con
with
sonido lo que fueron
bombs.
los bombazos en los años 90
Okay,
en
the
narcomenudeo en
bombshells
el centro, ¿sí?
of
Entonces eso se hace con una cabina de
the
sonido
bombs
que
from
usted
narcotic
pueda
traffickers
acercarse al centro
downtown.
credencial o qué sé yo,
So
de
we
esa
must
cinta,
distribute
porque
or release
no sé, o
cards,
sea, es algo pero pues tampoco soy muy dado a
give
manejar
out
ese tipo
cards.
de
Ya
campañas,
entendí.
entonces no
But
sé,
I'm not also an expert on this sort of campaign.
Perfecto.
But I understood. Perfect.
¿Quién más?
Who else?
Yo,
Me.
Dale, sí.
Okay, Sylvie.
bueno, yo no sé, yo apelaría a las ventanas, ¿no? Y yo pensaría que cada persona que
Okay,
esté
I
en esa
would
ventana, si
appeal
sus
to the
hijos están
windows,
vivos,
and I would ask people to write on their windows if their
pondría como
children are alive
mi
or
hijo está
not.
vivo
I would write on my window,
y
my
veo
child is alive,
8.000 hijos en Latinoamérica
but 8,000 children in
y
Latin
mis
America are
sobrinos
not.
tendría que poner
And Miss
mi hijo
Doris
está vivo.
would have to write on her window, my
Y
son
yo
is
creo
not
que
alive.
jugar como con eso,
And I think that to use that,
como con solidarizarse, como
creating
sí,
solidarity,
siento ese dolor
like I
y
feel that pain,
pero faltan todos los otros. no
Like,
sé,
yeah, I have my pain,
como
but we're still,
rápido,
sorry, my child is here, but there are so 8,000 missing
una,
children. And this would generate an
desarrollar
action that can
la idea
support
central de la campaña,
the
básicamente
central
es
idea of this campaign.
que coges una hoja y la pegas en
And it's
una
really
ventana.
easy to do. You simply take a piece of paper and you stick it to your window, stick it on your window. I think that's great.
¿Quién más?
Okay, what
Kenia
else?
escribió en el chat,
Kenya just wrote on the
Yo me
chat.
imagino crear una camiseta. ¿Faixa qué es?
como una franja,
Okay,
Algo
I imagine a t-shirt
alguna
with a
franja que
stripe,
muchas
like
personas
something
utilizan
visual that
incluso
people
como
can use in filters or
ejemplo
profile pictures
carteles,
or thumbnail pictures,
adhesivos, todo con
cartels,
éxito queremos
uh,
nuestros hijos vivos.
okay,
Así
adhesives,
todos usemos
everything that has, we
esta
want our children
camiseta,
alive so
yo ya
that
no le grito,
people in Brazil wear that t-shirt
yo ya
in
no
a
le grito en el
collective
chat, casi
movement.
no hablo, perdonen, esto también puede ser con la canción.
Okay, I'm not even sure which language I'm speaking, sorry.
En
Okay,
las
this can also be done in a
publicaciones
song with
es
videos, with images of,
súper
okay,
y
and
potente
another ways,
poner
okay.
en una ventana
I think that it's
nuestros
very
hijos
strong to write on a
mientras
window,
leemos
my
un cuento.
child is alive or not. I
Oye,
loved
la
that
idea de
idea.
Silvi y
I think
de
Sylvie's
Kenia son
idea and
complementarias
Kenyan's
porque
idea are
hacen parte como de la
complementary.
misma idea, creo yo.
They are the same idea, actually.
Mi hijo está vivo.
My son is alive or my child is alive. I think that's really great.
¿Cuál sería la frase?
What would the sentence be?
Queremos nuestros hijos vivos.
We want our children alive.
Divino. Listo, muy bien.
Podría ser, pues, para complementar eso,
It could be
pues un
to
video, ¿no?
complete this idea, okay, a video
De
Sí.
quienes tenemos a
of
nuestros
those
hijos, nuestras
who
hijas
have our
vivas
children
y
alive
quienes no tienen
and
a
those
sus hijos o
who
a sus hijas
don't
vivas a causa de la guerra
because
y
of
todo
this
esto que hemos
war
vivido
and
todos.
drugs.
Mm.
De acuerdo, está muy chévere la idea.
I agree. The idea is great.
Perfecto.
Perfectly.
Listo. ¿Alguien más?
Okay, anybody else?
¿Nadie más?
Anybody else?
Alfonso, Estefanía.
Alfonso, Stefania?
¿Estamos bien así?
Are we okay like this?
Si quieren hablar, fresco. Si no, no.
If you want to speak, it's okay. If you don't, that's
Bueno,
fine.
listo. Entonces yo creo que... ¿qué hubo?
Okay.
¿Sí? ¿Alguien habló?
Did somebody speak?
Listo. Entonces miren, yo creo que hay
So
una
look,
cosa acá. Yo creo que
I
hay,
believe there's something.
digamos, la idea de las ventanas.
The idea of the windows,
Creo que no vamos a lograr hoy hacer ya la parte de la
I
ingeniería.
think we will not be able to work today on the engineering of all of
Tenemos que
this.
hacerlo, pero
We should be able to do it,
están las ventanas.
but
Entonces
it's
ya
on the
tenemos la
windows.
tarea, ¿no? El graffiti,
We already have some
la
assignments. We have the
mensajero.
graffiti, the messages, the meetings.
O sea, el chiste de las reuniones es que tiene que ser de
So the
más
purpose of the
de
meeting is that
5
it must
países.
be of at least 5 countries,
Tiene un mensaje latinoamericano.
because then it has a Latin American message. Otherwise, it will not be strong. It will lack strength.
La idea de las ventanas,
So the idea of the windows,
donde yo diría que unámonos al mensaje que
I would say
Colombia, Silvi, es que sea el mismo
let's
mensaje
join
que
the message. Let's
Colombia,
adopt the message
Perú,
that Kenya
Chile,
is giving.
queremos a nuestros hijos
Sorry.
vivos.
And it is, we want our
En las
children
ventanas
alive.
empecemos a ponerlo.
So on the
En
windows,
las
we start
networks
writing
empecemos
that
a
on our
ponerlo de
windows.
nuestros hijos
Also
vivos.
on networks, we want our children
Y
alive.
lo empiecen a poner y a divulgar.
And so that people
Pero
start
puede
posting
ser
it
una
and
foto de una ventana
disclosing it.
para
But on networking, it should be the
Eso es
picture
lo
of a
que quiero.
window,
que lo importante es la
Entonces,
acción en la ventana.
todo
because
esto lo
that's the
tenemos que
important
hacer
thing, the
nosotros.
action on the window.
¿Sí?
We have to do all of
Acá
that.
llegó Andresito, que es el diseñador y el
Okay, Okay, Andres is here. He's our designer and manager of our team. He's a wonder.
Entonces queremos nuestros hijos vivos.
So we want our children alive.
Exacto, que en la foto sea la foto en la ventana buenísimo, pero
Exactly, the
también la
picture should be on a
no
window,
queremos nada de estampado,
but
por
also
favor,
designs of
porque
stamps
eso
and
también
posters.
apoya a gente, ¿sí?
I believe that
Entonces
people will
vamos a
support
apoyar
that.
con jornadas de estampado,
Like, take this
con
t-shirt,
lanzamientos de
printed, like
stickers,
printed
con gel,
t-shirt
con alcohol
with the social
y alcohol gel es
distancing and
desinfectante, ¿no?
the
Porque
masks and alcohol.
Muy bien.
queremos nuestros hijos vivos.
We want our children alive. Remember that we need help.
Queremos nuestros hijos vivos
We want our children
con
alive.
camisetas, con
Can
ventanas,
printed
con el
t-shirts,
mismo mensaje,
windows, same
con el mismo
message,
color, ¿sí?
and posters.
Debería uno ahorrar, levantar plata para hacer ese mensaje con
Okay, we should
subtítulos
raise
y todo.
money to write that
Hola,
message with
Salomé.
another subtitle.
Hola,
Hello.
Salomé.
Hello, Salome. Hi.
Divina,
Oh, she's so beautiful.
divina. Deberíamos quizás levantar plata, pero habría que ver
We should raise
cómo
some
la
money
pertenece, por ejemplo.
to paint a wall with that, for
Solo
example.
imagínense esa valla
Can you
con
imagine
esa
that
frase,
a
Marcela.
poster or
Pero si
sign?
levantamos plata
Mark
y
is
esa
gone.
valla,
But if we can raise
esa
money, imagine that
con
sign.
nuestros hijos vivos, con
Okay,
nuestros
that
hijos
poster,
vivos,
that
en
sign.
las
We want our
camisetas,
children alive
me parece buenísimo.
all over the country on the windows,
Pero
on
eso se me
printed
ocurre a mí.
t-shirts. Okay, this
Me
topic of the
parece
children
buenísimo.
entering
Creo que
school,
habría que afinarle un poquito qué vamos a hacer y cómo lo vamos a
I
hacer.
think we need to
Quizás hacer un
define what we're
proyecto
going to do and how we're going to do it. Maybe start a pilot in 2 or 3
que se
schools
sirva como
where we
un
could
mini
develop
protocolo
this idea as a mini
de
protocol of how it
metodología.
should be done, what would the methodology be,
Y lo que
what
podemos
we would
hacer
do,
aquí en Bogotá, pero digamos,
and
Silvi,
what we can do here in
¿en
Bogota.
dónde?
Okay, Sylvie in Brazil.
En Río.
En
Where
Río.
are you, Sylvie?
Entonces,
In
si hay
Rio.
un colegio amigo de Río, yo puedo hablar también.
Okay, and it's cool in Rio. Somebody, any friend that we might have in Rio,
Ser
people who
aristócratas
study in Catholic
de la
schools
fauna, cosas así. Entonces, hay gente
or
que puede
aristocratic
acceder a
schools
esos
here in
colegios públicos
Colombia.
dependiendo del colegio que
There are
sea.
people who can access those bourgeoisie
Pueden
high
invitar
schools, but there are also district
sería apenas
schools that we can
tener
access.
el
Gabo, I
protocolo
think it's
y
key to have the
pensar en
protocol,
eso.
the methodology. Let's think about what to
La
do.
idea del carnaval a mí me parece muy
And the
potente
idea of the
por el
carnival is very
tema que
powerful
pone Gabo del COVID. ¿Sí?
because there's
Entonces,
the objection that Gabo puts on COVID,
pero hacer un carnaval,
but making a carnival, okay,
o sea, como batucadas con distanciamiento,
like assemblies with social distancing.
la idea del carnaval me suena,
The
pero no me
idea
sé
of
cómo
the
ejecutarla.
carnival is really cool, but I don't know how to bring it to reality.
No tengo muy claro, Magda, cómo
I'm not very
aterrizarlo
clear on how to
mm,
make it real in these times of pandemics.
porque lo que uno podría hacer
Because what
es que
we could do,
miren esta vaina,
you
el
look at
siguiente
this,
concierto, ¿cómo es que se llama el
the
concierto que hacen los
next concert, what is the name of that
artistas?
concert that Riaño does with Cesar Lopez?
Ah, juepucha.
Can't remember.
Y que se replique
And we should do something and let it and replicate it in other countries.
concierto por la vida.
A concert for life.
O sea, ya van 3 conciertos por la vida.
We have already had 3 concerts for life, and there are several artists. So the next concert for life should have the message, we want our children alive.
Y que sea tipo carnavalesco, man.
And we want it to be carnival-like.
Eso sería mucho mejor. Y pues eso
That would be
tendría,
better.
pues tendría más tiempo pues para
And we would have so much more
planearlo.
time to
Pero sí
plan.
me parece que eso
But I
sería
believe,
Marcela Tobar. Esa es una tarea que lo van a
okay,
resolver
this
ustedes.
is an assignment for Marcela Tovar.
Al principio. Yo hablo con César
I will
y
talk to
Marcela
Cesar,
habla
and
con
Marcela will talk to Riaño,
y que
and let's
si los
try,
convencemos,
if we can
asociemos el
convince
concierto no
them
solo en Colombia,
to
sino
do
también
the
en
concert not
Centroamérica.
just in Latin America, not just in
Esa
Colombia,
es una
but
idea brutal. O sea,
broaden
¿qué
it.
te
That's a
parece?
brutal idea.
es
So
como
the
si
next
fuera
concert for life
un hit
will convey the message we want our children alive.
con este mensaje de la guerra y todo.
With this message of
Es fácil de
war,
hacer.
I think that's easily solved.
¿Listo?
Okay, that's
Tenemos
it.
poquitas tareas,
We have some assignments.
¿cierto?
We have a few assignments, don't we?
Está breve.
Okay, this is
¿Está breve
brave.
o no?
This is cool.
¿Está bueno o no?
It's really good, isn't it?
¿Está bueno o no?
Está muy bueno.
Deberíamos,
Yes, it's really good.
nos vemos,
Okay,
nos
maybe
vemos
we
con
can
los que estamos un grupito
meet
para hacer la
again
agenda,
so that we
las
can
actividades que salieron.
create the
Hay
agenda.
eco ahí que no sé por qué no estoy hablando. Sí.
You're speaking with some echo,
Yo
but
no sé si
okay, sorry, it's been solved.
ponemos como acciones,
Maybe
las
we can
acciones colectivas,
write something
las
like joint
actividades,
actions,
los
collective
responsables,
actions.
un plan de
Okay,
trabajo,
sorry, define the joint actions, the responsible
varias, varias
people
tareas, pero todas
for each action, the assignments that
ejemplo,
we in the sorry, the activities that we need to carry out.
Pues mira, te cuento que la
Well,
metodología de
the
este encuentro
methodology of this encounter
incluía una cosa que llamamos
included something that we
almanaque
call
Bristol, que
a
era
Bristol
precisamente
almanac, which
una,
was precisely
una lista
a
de
list
actividades
of
responsables
to-do
y
activities
deberes
with
de cada uno de los productos
assigning them to each
que
to a
habíamos
person
sacado
who
y
were going to be
y
responsible
era
for
una
it,
zona
and we were going to
cada
pick
uno.
out the results.
Entonces,
Okay,
es simplemente una tarea
so
de
simply
volvernos
it's
a
an
reunir y
assignment
llenar
of
esa herramienta
getting
que ya
together
tenemos de
again,
alguna manera
¿les
pensada.
meeting
parece?
again, and use that tool that we already have. So please
Lo
forward it
podemos
to me.
organizar
We can
contigo
organize it with you,
para
with
que
Marcela,
podamos tener el insumo
so
y
as to
así
have
avanzarlo
the
contigo y hacer
tool
el trabajo avanzado, ¿les parece?
and then to
Claro,
to get to a common agreement so that we can advance on
Buenísimo,
this work.
me encanta.
Okay, I love it.
divino taller, Diego. Me
A
encantó.
beautiful workshop, Diego. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it.
Divinas
Beautiful.
ideas. Gracias a
Beautiful
todos
ideas.
por
Thanks to
su
each and every one of you for your
creatividad.
creative energy,
Es súper
creating and creative energy.
esperanzador,
This is really
inspirador,
inspiring
mágico,
and
ver
heartwarming.
cómo
It's magical to
hemos
see
liderado
how
estas
this was
acciones y
so
estos
very
cambios
well led and directed.
se pueden
So
conjugar.
this transformation, this desire for transformation can be led.
Increíble.
You're a magician.
Muchas
Gracias.
gracias de verdad.
Thank you so much.
Gracias por ponerme a soñar y
Beautiful
Excelente
closure.
cierre
It
para
was
nosotros.
tremendous closure for this encounter. Thank you so much.
Oigan, en serio,
And goodbye.
lo
Please
vamos
say
a hacer.
thank you seriously.
Lo vamos a hacer.
Salo, say thank you.
Vamos a
Bueno,
hacerlo. Yo no sé si
Okay, let's
alguien más
do it.
quisiera decir algo
I don't know if
antes
anybody
de
else wants to add
que
up or say something. This is our last encounter until January
no sé
or
si
until
alguien
we
más
get
quisiera
together
decir
again. I don't know if
algo.
anybody else wants to say something. Then we'll say goodbye.
Yo quisiera, esto es una
I
cuñita,
would like to say
sobre
something,
todo a los compañeros y compañeras que
especially for
quieran
my
compartir el mensaje en sus
workmates.
respectivos países y
Uh,
organizaciones.
please convey the message on your different
Compartirlo en la
countries and
plataforma,
organizations. We will share it in our
eh,
platform and through
para un
emails.
cuestionario
We will
para
share a
mirarlo
link for a
y
questionnaire
de alguna manera tener
to
insumos
fill
para
out
el
so that we
proceso de
can get
automatización
tools for the
y
process of
organizaciones y de percepciones
automation
respecto al tema de
of
drogas.
organizations and
Entonces,
perceptions on the matter
que
of
se lo permitan
drugs.
nuestros compañeros y compañeras para que
So
porfa,
please
entre más personas estemos
convey the message to your
compartiendo
partners so that
insumos y elementos de
we can
análisis
have
respecto
more
para poder
tools and
transmitir
analysis elements
nuestra experiencia de este segundo
so that
encuentro.
we can
A todos y
transmit
todas, muchas
our
gracias. Espero que
experience
les
in the
haya
second
parecido
encounter. For
interesante.
all of you,
Nunca había estado con
thank
ustedes
you
en
very
un
much.
workshop.
Diego, I had never been with you in a workshop.
gracias.
Tremendous workshop. Thank you. Congratulations.
Chao, chao,
Gracias.
mil gracias.
Entonces así llegamos
Gracias,
al final de
Cami.
este segundo
Okay,
encuentro a la ciudad. Ha sido un encuentro mágico, ha
that's
sido
we get
muy
to our second
bonito.
encounter of the
Disfrutamos
right
este
to the
segundo
city.
encuentro de
It's been
encuentro
magical. It
y
gives us the
entonces de
sensation of
hoy en adelante
Latin America united
vamos a tener
and
México,
everything
Colombia,
going on from now
Venezuela,
on. We're going to have
Colombia,
Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, Puerto Rico, and
Venezuela
all the other
y
countries that want to
Brasil y
participate with this
Argentina. Este
super
programa lo vamos a
transformation agenda that
concretar
we have just
con Diego
concreted and designed
Cancino.
with
Así
Diego
que bueno,
Cancino.
les
So
quedamos a todos muy
we
agradecidos
are
por
very
habernos
thankful to all of
acompañado
you, everybody who
aquí, por
connected through
acompañarnos, por
Facebook,
ponernos al
everybody
día.
who
Muchas gracias.
provided their
Esta
opinions, who
semana
contributed with
tenemos
ideas.
seminario
This
colectivo,
week of
tenemos
conferences and
seminario
collective work is
Lleguemos a la
a
Ciudad,
virtual seminar on
vamos a
the
estar
right to the
invitando
city.
todo
We'll make it available for everyone so that everybody can access it and so that everybody who wants can connect to these work sessions into 2021 January, and we can continue dreaming and building transformation and the right to the city, which is the most important aspect. Thank you, Marcela. You were leader and guideline, a theoretical guide of this encounter, and she's made a lot of progress in this struggle. Thank you for all the CPA team that provided a lot of support against all odds. Thank you so much. Thank you, Diego, for this workshop. Okay, let's join hands. Let's hold hands virtually. Thank you.
Chao, chao.
Bye bye.